Welcome to the Monday, February 1st, 2021 virtual session of the Lake Forest City Council. Will the city clerk please call the roll?
Certainly. Honorable Mayor Pantaleon.
Here.
Alderman Morris.
Here.
Alderman Karas.
Here.
Alderman Rommel.
Here.
Alderman Notes.
No.
Alderman Preschler.
Here.
Alderman Kashkarian.
Here.
Alderman Bushman.
Here.
Alderman Weber.
Here.
Mr. Mayor, you have a quorum.
Thank you, Biddy. Now please join me for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you, everyone. I have to make a couple of statements at the beginning here. In accordance with state statute, I have made a determination that it was not practical or prudent to schedule an in-person city council meeting because of the COVID-19 pandemic, which is why this February 1st, 2021 city council meeting will be held remotely. The raise hand option of Zoom will be available during this meeting. We will also have opportunities for people to call in on the phone. We will have three periods of public comment tonight. The first is going to be on non-agenda items. The second will be with respect to the public hearing on electricity providers. And the third will be with respect to the McKinley petition or McKinley recommendation from the Plan Commission. The first item on the agenda is report of city officers and comments by mayor. I'm in sunny Florida right now, but I understand there's been a little bit of snow this week in Lake Forest. And I was there for the first one, but I wasn't there for yesterday's. But I understand that the performance of the snow removal crews was, I know it was extraordinary on Tuesday, and I gather it was even more extraordinary over the weekends. So congratulations for a great job to our crews. I had a lot of compliments on the work that they did earlier in the week, and I've had a number of comments from people in the last 2 days. So a great job. I understand Route 43 and Route 60 were both pristine for the first time in years after a big snowstorm. So great job, everybody, and thank you for a job well done. The next item on the agenda is comments by the city manager. Jason?
Thank you very much, Mayor and members of City Council. Good evening. I know we have a busy meeting tonight, so I will try to be brief, but as was teed up or teased at our meeting 2 weeks ago, this will be my public service announcement for the evening to plug some of the newest city initiatives. First, as many of may have now seen, last week we officially launched our new beta website. Really pleased with how it turned out. Joe, do you want to? Thank you. The new site offers, I think, a much improved and sleeker layout, and importantly, a responsive design for improved use on mobile devices. I think we've come to realize that, you know, most people now use mobile devices rather than desktop computers to either visit our website or to seek out other information. And so the new website certainly is much more mobile friendly. It also has improved site navigation with a more robust search engine. And I think one of the challenges we realized with the old website was that sometimes you had to drill down through multiple pages to try to find the information you were seeking. And with the new website, you can just use the search function that you can see right there on the screen to easily find the information that you're looking for. And so, you know, we're hopeful that the redesign will help guide visitors to learn more about the Lake Forest community, and for current residents, an opportunity to engage and interact with our customer service departments, and, you know, hopefully also empower the city to promote good governance through enhanced transparency. I noted a minute ago that this is still a beta website, so we are in a transitional period of testing and refinement. So everyone's patience is appreciated while we continue to work on finalizing the website's navigation, content, links, and so forth. So I would just note that, you know, while we continue that work over the next week or so. You may encounter some occasional broken web links or files. We're working with various search engines to re-index all of our individual pages, and that just takes a little time. And so that's why, again, we have a little announcement on the page for those that open that it is still, really a test website, but we expect to have all those kinks worked out, like I said, within the next week or two. And in the meantime, for anyone who's viewing the meeting tonight, if you can't find what you're looking for or are encountering any other frustrations or concerns, please don't hesitate to reach out and let us know. It's useful feedback for us, again, as we continue to refine the website. So I'll just conclude by acknowledging the work of Assistant City Manager Mike Strong and the entire interdisciplinary project team that spent many months working on this project to make it a reality. I think both based on a lot of the feedback I've heard to date, people seem very pleased with the look and layout of the new website. I really think they did a great job. Certainly, I think it's a vast improvement over what we had previously. And again, as I noted, once we work through a few of these remaining kinks, very pleased at what it'll do to help service the community in the months and years ahead. The second project that I also wanted to just spend a minute discussing is the city's new dedicated mobile app, which will actually be available by the end of the week in both the Apple and Google stores. This free app will provide, a centralized, quick and easy point of access to relevant Lake Forest information and transactions, including a request for services and problem reporting as part of our new citizen service request system, mobile payments, whether it be utility bills, paying for permits, other invoices, purchasing city stickers. We'll provide information on construction updates, other city news. We'll have automated mapping functionality, information on program activities and registration for various city departments, new resident information, just to name a few of the features. And I'll just spend a minute to dive a little deeper into two of the features that I think we at a staff level are really excited about. First, as I just mentioned, the citizen service request system. This new system, which is also available and accessible through the website, will allow residents to report any issues either by inserting any text or just by snapping a photo out in the field, wherever you may be. The new system will geolocate that individual's exact location, and once reported, will automatically route to the appropriate field staff to address the problem as quickly as possible. Residents have the ability to either report the issue anonymously, or they can elect to receive updates on the status of their work order request and be notified when the project is closed out. So I think this will be a great tool for the public, and certainly will provide some operational efficiencies for city staff as well. And then the last thing I'll note about the mobile app is the push communication functionality. And unfortunately, we're still a few weeks out from that being fully operational, but once implemented, that will allow us to proactively push out information of interest to the public. Residents can customize, which I think is really neat, what they want to receive information about. So whether it's daily field conditions for kids, for parents whose kids are in a soccer league, or real-time beach conditions for those in the sailing program, daily recreation Croya or Dickinson Hall programming updates, construction updates, public meeting notifications with links to supporting documents. Really, the possibilities are pretty endless for us in the amount of information we can share. And again, we're very excited about this tool and how it'll transform our ability to share information with the public. So in most respects, the app will be a great one-stop shop for any resident need or interest. And I think, again, it's just reflective of the modern way in which we all rely on mobile devices to access information and to communicate. So really excited to see this go live in about a week. I will again acknowledge the efforts of Jim Shaw, our innovation and technology director, along with the project team that he had in place to put this together. So, you know, again, in combination, I think these are just both really exciting tools that allow us to, you know, to bring ourselves more into the modern realities of how we interact and communicate with people. So happy to answer any questions about either of these projects. Otherwise, that concludes my report for this evening.
Thank you, Jason. Any questions or comments? Has anybody used the new website yet? Much improved.
Well done, Jason.
And when will the app be available on the App Store?
By the end of this week.
Okay.
And I should have noted that in the weeks ahead, we'll engage in a pretty significant marketing effort to really push this out to the community. It's only of value if people are downloading the app and using it. So in addition to having, you know, dialogue articles and social media posts, we'll probably be doing a separate mailer to every home in the community with QR codes and instructions on how to download the app and how to customize the front page to people's specific preferences and interests.
Great. Okay, if there are no other comments from the council, the next item on the agenda is the first of our 3 opportunities for citizens to address the city council. This is on non-agenda items. So if you want to comment on the McKinley petition or on the public hearing we're going to have about electricity providers later on, there will be other opportunities to talk about those things. So this is about non-agenda items for tonight. Members of the public can provide public comment by dialing the number on the screen here, 847-810-3643. You can also use the raise hand function on Zoom. So we'll wait a minute here for anybody to raise their hand or dial in.
Mr. Mayor, I don't see anyone with their hand raised.
And Mr. Mayor, I don't have any phone calls either.
Okay, thank you, Biddy. Thank you, Joyce. Next item on the agenda is committee reports. First is Property and Public Lands report by Property and Public Lands Chairman Alderman Kashgarian.
Thank you, Mayor Pantaleon, City Manager Wisha, and my fellow aldermen. Tonight, the PPL is excited to recommend the approval of a new lease agreement between the City of Lake Forest and the Elwha Farm Foundation. This agreement ensures the long-term sustainability of the relationship that has been developed over between the two parties over the years. It also serves as another example of successful public-private partnerships that make Lake Forest such a wonderful place. And if one thinks about it, really they're all over the place. We think about the Gorton Community Center, Ragdale Foundation, the Forest Park renovation, the Market Square 2000 renovation and restoration. So this is really kind of the bedrock of who and what we are as a community. The Elwha Farm Foundation gardens, market, and programming activities provide a valuable service to our community and enhance Lake Forest overall quality of life. We're excited to watch their continued success into the future. Also want to acknowledge the agreement for us tonight is the culmination of much time and effort spent by both parties to develop a mutually beneficial agreement that will last well into the future. I'd also like to recognize all the past Property and Public Land Committee members who provided the critical direction to get us to this point, to the city staff for their efforts in negotiating this agreement, And then also want to thank the current Elwha Farm Foundation Board President, Marina Purrier, and past President, Alex Hodges, the entire Elwha Farm Foundation Board, and their current Executive Director, Laura Calvert, for their creativity and patience throughout this process. It has been a long process, and for the wonderful services they provide to our community. We do look forward to watching their continued growth and success in the years ahead. The proposed lease agreement between the city and the Elwha Farm Foundation is included in tonight's City Council packet and is recommended by the PPL Committee for council approval this evening. The lease agreement is contained within tonight's omnibus agenda for approval, but if anybody chooses to, you can pull it, and we'd be happy to entertain any questions or comments from the alderman at this time. And City Manager Jason Wisha can answer any questions that you may have. So again, open it up to any questions or comments from my colleagues.
Alderman Goshgarian, it's Alderman Weber. I just wanted to thank all those involved. It's really been a work in progress, and I am pleased to see it move ahead.
Great, thank you.
I echo Alderman Weber's comments. I know that this has been a project that's been on the burners for a long time, and it's really wonderful to see it move forward and move forward in a manner that preserves the wonderful things that are happening out at Elwha and the transitions that have occurred. It's just a wonderful place and a real community treasure. And I think this agreement goes a long way to ensuring that it will exist far into our future. But I did just have one question. It's not really a question, but if someone could just review how the rental amount was determined. I think I understand, I'm sure I understand it, but I think it's important for the public to just understand the formula that was used in arriving at the rental payments and what the concerns are going forward with that. So if someone could tackle that question, I'd be appreciative.
Jason, could you address that for us, please?
Sure. Yeah, I'd be happy to answer that. So to Alderman Rummel's question, the lease rate was really developed by calculating the anticipated facility and grounds, capital and maintenance costs over the 5-year term of the agreement, and then assigning those costs proportionally between the city and the foundation. And so, incorporated into the lease rate is full cost recovery for the city for spaces that are occupied by Elwha Farm Foundation, and proportional cost recovery for some of the spaces designated as common areas, with the city then responsible for costs associated with Wildlife Discovery Center occupied spaces, and again, our proportional share of the common area space as well. And just as a reminder to the council, and if it's of interest to the public, as part of our due diligence in this process and calculating the new lease rate, the city did have an independent facility assessment conducted to identify likely future capital expenses. And so we're very confident that we know what's coming during the term of the agreement, and then certainly we can reassess those costs every 5 years, in any successor agreement. But I will say, and point sort of echoed by Alderman Rummel earlier, really our goal was to ensure that the taxpayers of the community weren't being asked to subsidize the foundation's existence at Elwha Farm, balanced with the sensitivity for the long-term financial viability of the Elwha Farm Foundation, since we really do view them as a long-term partner at the property. And so I can say I feel very confident that we were able to achieve that. Again, just very pleased to be at this point.
Yeah, I think it's also important to point out that this is sort of an evergreen contract, that it basically expires in 5 years, but if neither party says that they want out, it renews automatically, which is nice. I think that 5-year term is very reasonable. And I'd also like to point out that there is a cost of living increase also baked into the formula, which is always good to see. So congratulations again on working this out.
Amen.
Alderman Bushman?
No, I said I concur totally. And again, I look on it as a very mutually beneficiary arrangement, not only from the city standpoint, the foundation standpoint, but our citizens, and look forward to a long-term relationship there, and happy that we have the arrangement that worked out for everyone.
Yeah, I'd like to reiterate that myself. This has been a very long process. It's gone through a number of iterations, and I think we finally found the right answer. And this is a good model for this relationship to follow going forward. And I think will protect the interests of the neighbors and Elawha and the city. And congratulations. I want to give a shout out to Mike Strong and his efforts to work this out along with Jason. Jason kind of pushed it over the finish line, but there's been lots of input from a lot of sources, and it's a job well done. So thank you.
Yeah, and I'll just note too that, you know, there's been a lot of staff involved in this over the months and years. Certainly Kathy Zerniak, you know, first and foremost, but also Elizabeth Holub, Sally Swarthout, Chuck Myers. There's been a lot of people involved, and then of course on the other end, really a ton of credit goes to, you know, the current leadership on the foundation board and their new executive director. Throughout this process over the last year, they've inspired, at least for me, tremendous confidence that they are a great partner for us to be working with and well into the future. And so very appreciative of all their efforts.
Any other comments or observations before we move on? Okay, well, the next item is a report from the Environmental Sustainability Committee, which will be accompanied by a public hearing. It's a request to, I'll introduce Alderman Melanie Rummel and Mike Strong, the Assistant City Manager. This is a request to conduct a public hearing to consider amendments to the City of Lake Forest's Plan of Operation and Governance for its electricity aggregation program. I guess, Melanie, will you?
Right. Yeah, I'll take it from here, and then I'll pass it back to you after when Mike Strong finishes.
Okay.
Illinois law allows a municipality to seek bids for the provision of electricity supply on behalf of residents and small commercial customers in hopes of securing electricity rates that are lower than the standard rate offered by ComEd. The city, working in tandem with various North Shore municipalities, approved a program for municipal aggregation back in 2012 that ran through 2017 and was able to achieve over $4 million in savings for residents and small businesses. But unfortunately, since that time, we, along with many other communities, have not been able to secure rates that could guarantee savings. However, we're witnessing a new model of municipal aggregation emerge that might offer us a new opportunity to achieve some savings that can benefit the entire community. Potential benefits of this model include the purchase of renewable energy credits to offset our community's use of brown energy with green energy, or new revenue that can be also used to implement community-wide energy or sustainable initiatives. In other words, we actually stand to possibly make some money on this. I think the estimate is that we might possibly achieve a $50,000 savings by joining into this aggregation. And then it's up to us as to how or where we want to allocate that savings. Due to its uniqueness, exploring this new model will require us to revisit our plan of operations and governance that guides our municipal aggregation program. The Environmental Sustainability Committee met in December to discuss this initiative, and they recommended it be brought to the City Council for consideration. While I understand there is no formal action being requested of the council tonight, Mr. Mayor, I ask that you open this for the first of our required 2 public hearings on this matter. They were properly noticed on January 14th and January 21st.
I would entertain a motion to conduct a public hearing to consider amendments to the City of Lake Forest Plan of Operation and Governance for its electricity aggregation program and open the public hearing. Do I have a motion?
Moved.
Seconded.
Second. Will the clerk please call the roll call vote?
Alderman Morris? Alderman
Okay.
Harris?
Aye.
Alderman Rummel?
Aye.
Alderman Notes?
Aye.
Alderman Preschlack?
Aye.
Kashgarian?
Aye.
Alderman Bushman?
Aye.
Alderman Weber?
Aye.
8 yeas, 0 nay. Public hearing is open.
I imagine if there are any questions from council members, this would be a time to entertain those as well. Am I correct?
Once Mike has done his, made his presentation.
Right,
Okay.
good evening. Mr. Mayor, members of council, can you see my screen here? I'm pulling up a brief presentation for you. Great, thank you. Yeah, efforts to explore this program, specifically one that promotes renewable energy or reduces the city's contribution to the regional carbon footprint, are both recognized in our sustainability and strategic plan. And this is just, it's another opportunity that will allow us to work cooperatively with a consortium of communities around the North Shore. But I wanted to provide some brief introductory slides to kind of walk the council and those that may be watching from home through this. As Alderman Rummel indicated, this is the first of 2 required public hearings in order for the city to even consider looking at or exploring this model of municipal aggregation. And so outside of that, no real formal actions being requested this evening. Before I get really into the model, I thought it would be helpful to revisit this concept of municipal aggregation, recognizing that there was a different council in place and that some of you may or may not be familiar with this. But back in 2009, through state legislation, municipalities were granted the authority to essentially aggregate electricity supply on behalf of residents and small businesses that meet a certain threshold. Solicit bids, we could go out and try to achieve savings on electricity supply rates, which you can see there on the bill. And recognizing that ComEd, does not supply electricity; they only distribute it. They buy electricity in the retail market and pass that cost on. And so aggregation, deregulating the market allowed municipalities to take care of that. And in some cases, in many cases, it was very much cheaper to do it that way, to go out to the retail energy market and engage in supply contracts. And states allowed municipalities to adopt what's called an opt-in or an opt-out program. Opt-in, permitting residents to sign up individually for the offer, or opt-out, meaning everyone was automatically enrolled unless you individually opted out. And so that, with the sole goal and purpose of generating savings. In Lake Forest, voters approved via referendum in March of 2012 an electricity aggregation program. We did establish an opt-out program. At the same time, the North Shore Electricity Aggregation Consortium was formed, made up of 8 communities around the North Shore to jointly bid supply contracts on behalf of those communities. And we were very successful. We saw savings of over $36 million across the consortium. In Lake Forest alone, we were able to save our residents and small businesses just over $4 million. But we have not been able to see those margins of savings. And a lot of that, quite frankly, has to do with the lack of, or with retail costs just coming down for electricity. ComEd's contracts, back in the late 2000s were just artificially high. And this aggregation program really allowed us to get into the market at the perfect time. And really achieve some significant savings for residents. But since rates have come down in the around 2014, 2015, the margins just haven't been there. Natural gas has been low, and we're seeing ComEd's rates be very competitive in the market. And so this, as we have continued to monitor the market, we're seeing aggregation programs evolve to respond to this fact. We'll call this new program Aggregation 2.0. But the traditional aggregation program really had some very simple parameters. Everyone was enrolled. There was a fixed rate offer, maybe a little bit higher if you wanted a 100% green option, but that rate lasted about a year and then it was reevaluated. But that main objective, as I stated, was really to save money for residents. So as we looked at that, now that guaranteed savings can't be delivered, well, how could savings be used to benefit a community? And this new aggregation model exists on capturing some savings to provide value across the community. And specifically, there are about 64 communities throughout Illinois that have done this and been successful. They've been able to take some savings that have been achieved through this model of aggregation and invest those back into the community in a variety of ways. And how this would work is that the pool of customers in your community, some of them would be enrolled with an alternate energy supplier, while others would remain with ComEd. And the savings that would be generated from the first pool would then be granted back either to this municipality to use for general revenue purposes or to purchase renewable energy credits. So it's a great opportunity for communities to, again, reinvest to help reduce carbon footprint without increasing supply costs for residents. And so as we evaluated, the opportunity for aggregation and the fact that, hey, we really don't have an opportunity to guarantee savings, while we could do nothing and just keep our program idle, there might be value in considering a program that could provide some resources to further our energy goals or sustainability goals. So, as I stated earlier, we can shift some customers to an alternate supplier. Those customers would then generate some savings throughout the community that could be then used. All residents would pay the same rate. There would not be a rate increase for either pool of customer. They would still all receive a single bill from ComEd. There would be no change in prioritization for the supply. Keep in mind, ComEd really has no supply interest. It's really in distribution. So all customers would continue to be distributed electricity by ComEd. The supplier would embark on a marketing campaign on behalf of the city, much like it did back in 2012. It handled all of our correspondence. There was a customer service agent. There would be no cost to the city to participate in this. So it's a very seamless operation or transition for residents that if the city were to embark in this model. And then we would be able to determine what to do with those savings. Would we want the supplier to provide us renewable energy credits? Would we want the supplier to provide us a grant to use those resources for other community-wide initiatives? We would be able to determine that once a contract was reviewed and considered. So there's high value opportunity here. Since we cannot capitalize on savings, how can we can't benefit direct savings for all residents, but we may be able to bring in some savings to benefit the community. Really presents an interesting value proposition for us. But at the time we adopted our plan of operation and governance, which the plan of operation and governance that we're talking about tonight is really our aggregation rule book. It describes how we intend to operate our program. It ensures we meet, the legal requirements under the state law. And so this type of model of, not resulting in direct savings wasn't really contemplated back when we established this in 2012. And so included in your packet was a copy of the Plan of Operation and Governance with some red line amendments that really allow us to move forward in this process and allows us to really consider this or contemplate this type of arrangement by adding flexibility with the ComEd rates. So ensuring that, hey, we may not get rates below ComEd. It allows for us to accept renewable energy credits that are procured by the supplier. And it specifies standards for the procurement and implementation of this. So, really this is about being able to ask those questions of the supplier and to participate, in this type of model if we receive favorable bids in the future. And so in accordance with state law, as Alderman Rumble indicated, we do have 2 required public hearings on this. Anytime a community wishes to amend its plan of operation and governance, state law does require 2 formal public hearings. But again, outside of the public hearing, no formal actions being requested. But this is, I'm sorry, let me forward here, the next steps. As we look at the trajectory of this, we'd have a public hearing tonight. There'd be a public hearing scheduled February 16th. And then, we could also review amending the POGO at that time, the Plan of Operation and Governance. We would seek bids and then bring those back to council for formal consideration. And I should note that our intention would be to seek a flat rate, just to see if we would be able to achieve savings. While we haven't seen that throughout the state, we haven't seen much benefit. Doesn't mean we can't ask. And I think that would be our intention, is to allow us to sort of see what's out there and see what benefit we might be able to bring the community, whether it's in direct savings or in savings that could be redistributed in the form of renewable energy credits or other initiatives that may be desirable to the council. So with that, I'd be happy to take questions or open it up for any questions from the audience.
Questions for Mike or Melanie?
I have a question. I'm not sure who the best one's to answer. I suspect it is Mr. Strong. About a year ago, I think it was, we started a community solar subscription program. And as Mr. Strong knows, some of us did sign up for it, went through all the hoops. And I think it's part of what they call the North Shore Community Solar Program. In your slides, you indicate that this program coexists with that program. In the agreement itself, and that's one of the changes in the agreement, it specifically says there's a carve out for the customers that have a community solar subscription program. Could you clarify, what's what? Should those people on the community solar program cancel out of that to go under this, or what's the differences? What's the blend?
Yeah, that's a great question. And so part of the reason that was included is much like a current resident who, let's say, may be engaged in an alternate supply contract with an Eligo or Elevate or another energy provider, they wouldn't be eligible to participate in this program because they're already engaged in a contract for supply. With community solar, it's very similar. We'll consider those residents as those that already have supply contracts with an alternate supplier, because they're actually engaged in a subscription with a community solar farm. And so they would be ineligible from the city's pool for this type of program. But it's a good point you raised, because we have now, there are going to be 2 opportunities here. One, the community solar will offer direct savings. That's a 20% savings on supply. So if the resident's interested in saving money on their electricity supplies, the community solar offers that. But for everyone else that may say, I don't know who to go with, because we get the call a lot from residents to say, well, Is the city have an aggregation program? Do they not? There's solicitors that are stopping by. This is the alternative, is to potentially engage in a program that would streamline that opportunity for those that may be uncomfortable, or residents that may be uncomfortable engaging in separate supply contracts. And so unfortunately, with the way this program is run, community solar subscribers would be considered ineligible because they're, you know, engaged in that supply contract. But that's why there is a carve out for community solar in the amendment.
And with the community solar, you're getting a commitment to get power from a solar source. Whereas under this program, you're talking about there's no dedicated supply from solar. It may come from there, but it's not built into that plan, I assume.
Correct. It's going to be the standard standard profile that ComEd offers. And so I believe right now it's around 7 or 16% in there with renewables. But I think, you know, ComEd's goal is to get to a 25% load profile with just strictly renewables by 2025, but we'll see. But you're right, that's correct. Solar, 1 kilowatt hour is going for a solar, you know, kilowatt. With this program, it would be a mix. It would be brown and green energy that, you know, a resident would be.
And if I understand what you're saying on the bottom line, there may well be a difference in the actual per kilowatt hour charge for a customer under the one program versus a customer under the other program.
Correct. Well, correct. Community solar, there's a guaranteed 20% savings on the supply costs. With this program, it would be the ComEd rate. So whatever ComEd is charging for supply is what all customers would pay under this program, including any purchase energy adjustment, which can fluctuate about 0.5 cent, positive or negative. So there's with this, for those residents that aren't engaged in separate supply contracts, that aren't engaged in community solar, adopting or moving forward with this program or this model won't result in any additional costs to the resident, because they'll be paying essentially what they're paying ComEd.
If I could, one last question on this point, because I had the impression that the city was in a way promoting the community solar subscription type of program, North Shore. Are they still going to be doing that in light of this additional program?
Yeah, and we're working on additional marketing efforts to roll that out. We've somewhat plateaued in Lake Forest, but you know, we still have you know, the dialogue. We're looking at other medium to promote that. So very much we'll continue to be promoting it. We have a lot of supply available for subscriptions. So you know, we hope that residents continue to consider community solar, but yeah, certainly not looking to idle that.
Thank you.
Mike, is there a distinction between who realizes the savings between community solar and this program?
And that's a good question. I should also note we have our consultant is with us as well, Mark Pruitt. I'm going to see if he can address that question.
Good evening, Mike. I think I'm unmuted.
Yeah, there you go.
Very good. Sorry for the delay. Yes, I believe the question was, where do the savings go from one program versus the other? Is that correct?
Yeah, that's correct. Yes.
Okay, very good. So we have 2 programs that would possibly be operating in the same community at the same time. We do this, just as a note, with some other communities as well, most notably Oak Park, which has a community solar program as well as a municipal aggregation program operating in tandem. So you're not a guinea pig here by any means. Under your community solar program, that is for residents that volunteer to be in the program. They've responded to the outreach from the municipality, and they have entered into an agreement with the community solar provider where they receive net metering credits that are equal to roughly 20% of their energy supply portion of their bill. So that's an actual savings that shows up in the consumer's utility bill every month. So that's option A. Option B could be municipal aggregation. And municipal aggregation could have two flavors. One is a fixed price that is substantially below the ComEd rate, in which case that would be a great opportunity. We haven't seen it recently, but we want to be open to that opportunity. If that were to be secured, then again, the residents would see a lower cost on their bill and the individual consumers would realize a cost savings. What we're talking about here and what Mike has described as aggregation 2.0, this ComEd price match arrangement, in that case, the consumer would see the exact same price on their bill that they would from ComEd. Every month there's a slight change in that cost that would be matched every month throughout the term of the contract. The difference being that an amount of savings would be gathered from each of those accounts and consolidated and then presented to the municipality for the municipality's use. How the municipality wishes to use that municipal grant is up to the municipality. The supplier is agnostic. The only thing that really we want to do is make sure it's the right number. And in that case, those funds would be available for the municipality to direct towards, I think Mike has mentioned, the purchase of renewable energy credits towards your community sustainability goals. Could go towards sustainability program activities or the like. I hope that's complete. I know it's a lot of words, but we're trying to put a raft of options together that have the best potential for the community.
So I think that, would it be correct as a shorthand to say that with community solar, the savings are accrued by the customer? With community aggregation, the savings really go to the municipality. Would that be the shorthand way to sort of summarize the differences between the two?
Yes, very concise.
Mike, it's Jennifer. I have a few questions. First, the aggregation 2.0, is that run independent of the consortium?
It's yes and no, but we're the consortium is the group that has been bringing or been investigating the model. And so there are a number of consortium communities that are already ahead of the game. They've gone through, they've amended their POGOs, they're looking to move forward. So it's an initiative that was born of the consortium and was brought to the city's attention through that relationship.
Okay, so there are no inherent benefits of doing this with the consortium. This is something that we've learned about or been introduced to, and now are exploring the economics and benefits for the city of Lake Forest. Two other quick questions, and I think that Mark might have answered this. I was wondering about the renewable energy credits, if those benefited the individual or the municipality, and it sounds like now that it's the municipality for the aggregation program and the solar program benefits. So then the third question related really is, this isn't necessarily a very sort of simple and, easy to understand, issue. It's an important one. But so does this program rely on the city to educate our residents, our citizens about the benefits of participating if we are going to, expect them to opt in order for the participation rate to be what we hope it would be?
Yeah, I recognize it is complex, and we talked about this with the committee as well. Mark, and I will start, and then maybe you can add to this. A lot of the communication, what we have found success with this program, while the city is not relieving its role, it's important that the city be involved. There are suppliers that have the resources they've developed. They'll provide a lot of customer service on this, direct mailers, follow-up mailers, A lot of communication that the supplier is helping kind of coordinate and mobilize. I think back in 2012, when we established the initial aggregation program, I think there were a lot of phone calls, and obviously there was a lot of question about that. And I think with this program, there's an added level of complexity because there's 2 letters going out. There's an opt-in and an opt-out. And so I think, what we have to explore with the supplier is to lay out a communications and a marketing plan that's going to work if we get to the point where there's a program that we're looking to implement. So I think that, we're looking at this program, the concept, the way that it's been modeled is that residents are not going to be paying anything differently. They're going to be getting the same bill. All that's going to change on some of the bills are the supplier information. I think that certainly that is a key point, though, as we continue to explore this, is managing the complexity of this and making sure that we can communicate that value, as we work through this process. One thing I was going to mention real quick, and then I'll let Mark add anything else to the communication piece. With the renewable energy credits, just a quick point, we estimate that, we may be able to offset about 1/3 of the residential consumption in the city by the amount of savings that could be achieved in this program, which is got approximately 3,500 homes that could be offset with renewable energy credits, which is quite substantial. And so I think it's certainly an opportunity, but obviously, that value and that benefit does come with some responsibility and communication. So I recognize that. Mark, was there anything you'd like to add?
Just a little bit of experience from some of the other communities where we've been working on this over the past few years. First, the municipality is always in charge. So if there are specific outreach and communication requirements that the municipality believes are necessary to protect the residents, those can be built into the solicitation, and that can be part of the contract and the selection process for any retail energy supplier. So you're not releasing or surrendering authority. We want this to be a very deliberate activity, and I know that the peer organizations within the North Shore Consortium have been giving this some thought. I'm fielding calls from those folks as well. So communication is very important. I believe that we can present your board with samples of those communications for their approval so everybody's comfortable before the fact. The second item is we have geared most of the communication in community solar as well as aggregation to really direct communications from the consumers to the service provider that is always going to yield the best result. Now, there's always, I can't say that no one's going to call City Hall. That will happen, but what we've noticed over time from the first outing of municipal aggregation back in 2012, 2013, the tendency of consumers now that they understand that, oh, this is a program, if I want to get a direct answer, I do need to go to the service provider. I think that has started to come in as part of the landscape for the consumer's understanding. Yes, this is the municipality sponsoring this, but the service is being provided by this company. So we have noticed that the call volumes to the local municipality is much lower. There is this more tendency to go to the provider.
Thank you. Just one last question. Do we have any expectations around adoption of either program or both programs, given observations we've made in other communities?
Mark, any reactions to that? I can think of community solar. With community solar, I would say that we're, I think, having a pretty positive impact across the consortium. In Lake Forest, we're at about a 2% response rate, maybe about just under 2% adoption. So, which is pretty high. And I think throughout the consortium, we're maybe around 4 or 5%. Mark might have to give updated numbers, but.
Sure, and I just got those numbers here, and I can share them with you, Mike and board. The community solar program for the North Shore communities so far has had 1,111 respondents across the entire community, total of 60,000. So that's just a hair under a 2% response rate, 1.83% response rate. For solar development in Illinois, what that means is that there is approximately, let me do some quick math here. So far, just your communities alone are supporting the development and operation of looks like 3.5 community solar projects in Northern Illinois. So that's about 7 megawatts of capacity, but that's roughly 3.5 of these projects in Northern Illinois, of which there are only 75. So thinking about your 7 communities, supporting 3 out of the 75 projects in Northern Illinois, it's actually pretty good. I know that when you hear 2%, that doesn't sound like a lot, but it's the collective action and activity that's really the driver here.
And underscores the importance of the communications and marketing communications effort.
Precisely, yes.
Yeah, I think in the communications, it's important to highlight right up front that if you're signed up for community solar, you're not eligible for this, because I think that's going to be very confusing to people. You know, I mean, personally, I don't see why one would opt into this program versus the community solar program. But it's another option for those who are hesitant, who don't support solar for whatever reasons. So, it's just another option that's out there, and why not take advantage of it is kind of the way I feel about it.
Mr. Mayor, if there's no comments from the council, we do have someone from the audience who would like to speak. Can't hear you.
I was just about to ask for additional comments from the public. You can either call in to the phone number 847-810-3643, or also use the raise hand function on Zoom.
Our member of the public who's raising her hand is Rami Lopat. We'll bring her in. It'll just be a pause.
Okay. I'd like to add, by the way, with respect to public comment, that the comments should be kept to 3 minutes or less, please.
Thank you. I'm Rami Lopez. I live at 410 East Woodland Road. Greetings to you all. Alderman Rommel just asked the question that I had, which is, well, let me step back. I wanted to buy green energy. I did. I signed up with a contractor. There's not too many contractors out there in Illinois. So I pay a higher rate than ComEd, but I'm happy to do that. I wanted to lock into a longer term contract. That was very hard to find. But undo my confusion. I understand that there's strength in numbers, and I would be giving something back to the community, and I would be paying a ComEd rate, which is lower than I have. But why wouldn't I want to pay 20% less than a ComEd rate? That's my question. I missed the whole solar program, I guess. I'm sorry.
Mike, are you do you want to answer that question, or?
Sure, I'd be happy to send some information about the program offline, if that'd be helpful.
Yes, but I think probably other people have the same question.
Right, there was, yeah, there were some postcards that went out in the mail to residents that alerted residents to this community solar program. So it might be a good, people, get a lot of mail, so it might be a good idea to do some outreach again, Mike, because you know, to me, the community solar is just such a no-brainer. You're supporting solar energy, you're reducing your electrical bill. I love the program. I think that a lot more people should be signing up for it. And so maybe the burden is on us to communicate again, if we can do that.
And just to point out, I believe the caller indicated that she was in a contract already. So any residents or small businesses that have already engaged in a third-party supply contract wouldn't be eligible for community solar until that contract terminated, expired, or they, you know, sort of got out of that. So if,
I don't think they have a penalty for withdrawing.
there may be, and I would just, you know, you may have to consider that, but that they wouldn't have gotten the promotional items because that group of residents isn't eligible for community solar. Only those on the default ComEd supply rate were notified and provided the mailings.
And just a point of clarification, it's not 20% off your total ComEd bill. It's only the supply portion.
On the supply, right. I got that. Thank you.
Don't, it's not that great. It's 20% off of everything.
Well, it's less than I'm paying, so that's good.
Yeah.
Maybe just to add to that, since we have done such a wonderful job with the new website and being able to provide quick information, perhaps this can be highlighted, this topic, so people can, as we're marketing the new website, people then can be driven to see this information quickly and more accessible.
Good suggestion.
Happy to do that. And obviously, again, we'll note this will continue to be in the conversation moving forward as it comes back to the council too.
Mr. Mayor, we have another member of the public, Teresa Carangelo, who would like to speak. To bring her
Okay,
in.
thank you.
Hi, I live in the condos on Western Avenue. So this whole solar package really doesn't apply to the people that live in these condos unless we change our entire apartments, our roofs, because we all have flat roofs. So these packages that you guys are talking about, the old contract or the new contract, doesn't benefit the people that live in these in these condos, because individually we can't do anything. We can't have solar. We have to have regular electricity. We can't have solar electricity. We can't have these special merits or anything. Because we
again,
have to
I'm
go,
going to ask Mr. Pruitt to take that question. This
we
isn't
have to go
something-
based on what we have to go based on where we live. We don't have a regular, you know, home that has our own room, our own roof. Sorry.
Well, let me make one clarification. These are solar farms that ComEd is buying energy credits from. So the community solar is not a question of you have to install a solar panel on your roof. Just to clarify that much. Now I'll ask either Mike or Mr. Strong or Mr. Pruitt to comment on whether these credits are available to condominium or apartment users. I just don't know the answer to that.
Yeah, and they may be, it depends on the rate class, but I would say I would be happy to meet with Ms. Carangelo offline again to evaluate her specific circumstance. It would be helpful.
So you don't need solar panels to have solar.
Correct.
So where do you get the energy from then?
From Elgin. There's a large solar farm in Elgin and in other places where there's enough room for solar panels to be installed, and ComEd buys credits from those solar farms, basically. Is that accurate?
I'd be happy to talk offline further with you, Ms. Carangelo, about the community solar opportunity, if that'd be helpful.
Okay, and my other question is, you guys stated that the people that are in current contracts, they get merits, either a reduction in their bill or whatever. And this new contract 2.0 will go directly to our community. I'm all for going to the community, in any way. But in these circumstances and in my condo, we are run on electricity. So our electricity bill is extremely high, especially in the winter. I would rather it, unfortunately go to me than in this circumstance, than go to you.
Understandable. I think Mr. Strong has your contact information, and he'll get in touch with you. And I think that you raised a good point as to how multifamily dwellings can opt into some of these programs. I think that's a very good question.
Okay.
Yeah, I thank you very much for your comments. I think that this points out something that we can tell ourselves we're doing a great job on this, but there's still a tremendous amount of confusion out there, and we got a lot more work to do in terms of communication as to what community solar is, and also what this aggregation opportunity is, and the fact that resident by resident, they're mutually exclusive.
Correct, Mayor. And especially in my condo, I'm a board member also. And we have a lot of elderly people. And you guys send out these letters and everything and confuse everybody. And they don't know what they're signing up. They just say yes. And then they're screwed. They don't know what they just did. It just needs to be more informative and explained and not complicated.
Okay. Well, thank you.
I think,
appreciate your input.
Pardon me, Mayor, I think there might be an opportunity that's brought up with maybe some of these condominium associations that maybe the city can just do an outreach, or these board members can do an outreach to the city to then report back at their association meetings. So further education and opportunity for improvement.
Yeah, absolutely.
Good suggestions, no question. We'll follow up on that.
Other comments from the council or from the public on this matter before we close the public hearing?
Grace, can you tell us if there's anyone on the phone line?
There are no callers this evening.
Then I would please ask for a motion to close the public hearing and a second, and then we'll have a roll call vote.
So moved.
Seconded.
Alderman Morris,
Aye.
Alderman Karas,
Aye.
Alderman Rommel,
Aye.
Alderman Notes,
Aye.
Alderman Preschlack,
Aye.
Alderman Gashgarian,
Aye.
Alderman Bushman,
Aye.
Alderman Weber.
Aye.
8 yeas, 0 nay. Public hearing is now closed.
Thank you. And thanks for everybody's comments and the public's input. We obviously have some opportunities to do things in a way that would be more effective here, in my opinion.
Mayor, real quick, before you move on to the next item on the agenda, I apologize in my haste in finishing the prior conversation on the new lease agreement with Elwha Farm. Had noticed that the Elwha Farm Foundation board president had raised her hand and I think had wanted to offer a comment. And again, in a regular meeting in the city council chamber, certainly we would have had them up to the podium. So I apologize for the clunkiness in potentially revisiting that, but I see she is still on the call and has her hand raised. If you would be willing to entertain any comments, it looks like Marina is up now.
Absolutely.
Thank you all for
And
your,
apologies for the confusion.
no worries. On behalf of the Elwha Farm Foundation Board, I would like to reiterate Alderman Gashgarian's remarks. The city and thank the city staff, in particular, Jason, Kathy Cerniak, Julie Tappendorf, the past members and present members of the PPL for the great collaboration between the two entities. The cornerstone is a team that communicates, and I think we've done that. And I think you've done that, and we've reached an agreement that we can hopefully all live with in an evergreen manner. So thank you for your collaboration and time and attention to this.
Thank you, Marina.
Welcome.
Thank you, Marina, and my apologies for making you wait on that.
No, it's okay. I'm glad it was this, not the next.
Thank you for your creativity here. This was a big step forward.
Yes, thank you.
Mayor, I think you have to unmute yourself.
I'm trying to turn it on and off as frequently as possible so I don't have background noise. This will be the approval of an audit committee recommendation to award a contract with Baker Tilly US LLP to provide audit services for fiscal years 2021 through 2023 with an option to renew the agreement for 2 additional years. I would entertain comments from Alderman Morris and Finance Director Holland.
Sure. Thanks very much. Well, first I want to thank Director Holland and her finance team because they went to great lengths to prepare an RFP. We had reached the end of the 5-year term for Baker Tilly, and it was time to reevaluate the audit firm for the city. So they put together a comprehensive request for proposal and sent that out. Then we got a number of responses, but we narrowed it down to 3, including Baker Tilly, to continue as the auditor. And Vince Sparrow, who's head of the audit committee, led a Zoom interview, if you will, lengthy Zoom interview with each of the 3 firms. They were quite impressive, and I think we liked all of the 3 firms. But we decided to go for a continuation of the Baker Tilly contract for an initial 2 years. They've done a very good job for us as a city. I'm going to let Director Holland talk about it in more detail in a second, but we decided to recommend continuing Baker Tilly for 2 years, and we'll reevaluate that. They will have been on the case for 7 years at that point, and we can decide if we'd like to go forward with an additional 2 years. So Director Holland, I'll turn it over to you for your comments on the selection of Baker Tilly.
Thank you, Alderman Morris, for the opening comments. I don't know that I have a lot to add, but I would like to acknowledge Assistant Finance Director Diane Hall. She's unable to join you this evening, and so I get to stand in her place. But she led the effort, the initiative of drafting the RFP, sending that out, working through the proposals, and coordinating the interviews performed by the audit committee. For those in the public who are watching and or listening, the city's audit committee is made up of 5 Lake Forest residents who professionally work in the accounting or finance field. And then we're joined on that committee on an ex officio basis by the mayor and the city council finance chair, who is Alderman Morris. And so the primary charge of the audit committee is to coordinate annually and work with the city's independent auditors who conduct a full annual financial audit of the city's financial records every year. So they do a few other things for the city council, but that is their primary role. So as Alderman Morris noted, we were concluding the 5-year term with Baker Tilly, and staff and the audit committee shared the same interest in going back out to the market to see the level of interest, and particularly to just confirm that the city is still getting good competitive pricing for those services. So we did receive 3 proposals. They were all interviewed. I would note that they were the 3 finalists 5 years ago as well, who were also interviewed by the audit committee. So on January 21st, the audit committee did conduct interviews with all 3 firms. And in their deliberations did unanimously recommend continuation with Baker Tilly, and award again of a 3-year contract with an option to renew 2 additional years at the city's sole discretion. So I am happy to answer any other questions, but we would ask the city council to consider that audit committee recommendation this evening.
Questions or comments from the council? For the benefit of the public who may be listening tonight, one thing I always point out when this comes around, or when any recommendation from the audit committee comes around, is that the fact that Lake Forest has an audit committee is rather unusual in city government. And it's another good example of transparency, oversight, good governance, best practices that Lake Forest continues to lead the way in terms of public finance. And Finance Director Holub and Alderman Morris are in charge of making sure that that continues and continuously improves. And thank you for your great work here. I would entertain a motion to approve an audit committee recommendation to award a contract with Baker Tilly US LLP to provide audit services for fiscal years 2021 through 2023, with an option to renew the agreement for 2 additional years.
So moved.
And do I have a second?
Second.
Okay, roll call vote, please.
Alderman Morris,
Aye.
Alderman Karas,
Aye.
Alderman Rummel,
Aye.
Alderman Notes,
Aye.
Alderman Preschlack,
Aye.
Alderman Gashgarian,
Aye.
Bushman,
Aye.
Alderman Weber. 8 yeas, 0 nay, motion carries.
Thank you. Thanks, everyone. The next item is on our agenda is items for omnibus vote consideration. We have 11 items tonight. First is approval of the extension of the mayor's declaration of a local state of emergency until the next city council meeting. Second is approval of the January 19th, 2021 city council meeting minutes. Third is approval of the check register for the period January 1 to January 22, 2021. Fourth is consideration of an ordinance adopting the 5th supplemental to the Code of Ordinances for the City of Lake Forest, incorporating recent code amendments into the official city code, waive first reading and grant final approval. Fifth is approval of a recommendation from the Property and Public Lands Committee to approve the new lease agreement that we spoke about earlier between the City of Lake Forest and Elwha Farm Foundation. Six is consideration of an ordinance amending the City of Lake Forest Liquor Code to increase the number of licenses available to classes A1, C2, and C3. This is first reading and, if appropriate, final approval. Number 7, approval to purchase 1 replacement marked police vehicle included in the fiscal year 2022 capital equipment budget to the Suburban Purchasing Cooperative, low bidder, Curry Motors, in the amount of $36,487. 8th is award of bid for the replacement of a fire department administrative vehicle included in the fiscal year 2022 capital equipment budget to the Suburban Purchasing Cooperative's low bidder Curry Motors in the amount of $43,890. 9th is award of a bid to purchase a pull behind top dresser included in the fiscal year 2022 capital equipment budget to the National Sourcewell low bidder JW Turf in the amount of $36,893. 10th is approval to purchase a replacement fairway mower for the golf course section to Reinders Inc. in the amount of $46,520, included in the fiscal year 2022 capital budget. And 11th is consideration of an ordinance approving a recommendation from the Zoning Board of Appeals, first reading, and if desired by the City Council, final approval. Are there any items here that any member of the council would like to see removed and taken separately, or are there any questions?
I have a couple of questions or comments. Item number 4, Biddy, I know we've gone over this before, but so we are updating what's available regarding city ordinances. So now it'll be current to 2019, is that correct?
That is correct. Over the next 2 days, you'll see American Legal will put what the City Council passed in 2020 on the Advanced Legislation tab on the American Legal page. And then in at this time next year, then we'll adopt all of 2020. And the advanced legislation tab allows the public to see what legislation the city council passed, so it's at their fingertips. So it's
That has not yet been incorporated into the body of the American legal ordinances. I just want to be sure somehow that we make that very accessible on this new website. You know, sometimes if I'm doing research or something, I'm in there and I'm getting these ordinances that I know we've acted on and changed. And so if we could somehow make that very visible on the new website, I think that might be a good idea.
We can do that, and that should be up to date by the end of the week with American Legal.
Great, thank you. And then I just wanted to make a comment on item number 8, in that this is going to be our first venture into a hybrid vehicle for the fire department. And it came through, again, a recommendation from the Environmental Sustainability Committee that we start to move in this direction. So here we have it. Item number 8, the fire department administrative vehicle. So I just want to say thank you, and let's hope that we're happy with this vehicle and we can move forward with many more.
Thank you.
Mr. Mayor.
Other comment?
Mr. Mayor.
Yes. Alderman Bushman.
I have a question. It relates to liquor, if you don't mind, but it's item 6. And in there, we're talking about a new liquor license for Elua Farms that deals with packaged goods for consumption off-site. Do they already have a liquor license to provide liquor service on-site when they have their functions? Is that a separate one that already exists?
If I may, they do already have a liquor license that allows them to hold 26 events on site annually. What this license would allow them to do is expand their programming and allow them to sell packaged liquor that would be part of an online class. So they would get the package sales, like a mixology class that would allow them to have that class on Zoom, and people could come to Elua and pick it up.
Okay, that's what I assume, that they already had one for the on-site usage. Yeah, thank you.
They do.
Thank you, Betty. Other questions or comments? Okay, there being none, I would entertain a motion to approve the 11 omnibus items as described.
So seconded.
Okay, roll call vote, please, Biddy.
Alderman Morris.
Aye.
Alderman Karas.
Aye.
Alderman Rommel.
Aye.
Alderman Notes.
Aye.
Alderman Freshlack.
Aye.
Alderman Kashgarian.
Aye.
Alderman Bushman.
Aye.
Alderman Weber.
Aye.
8 yea, 0 nay. Motion carries.
Thank you, everyone. The next item on the agenda is old business. Consideration of a recommendation from the Plan Commission pertaining to a zone change and plat of consolidation related to Phase 3 of the McKinley Road multifamily planned unit development. I'm going to turn it over to Kathy Cerniak to summarize the recommendation from the Plan Commission. Before I do that, I want to mention that we will have, as I mentioned before, a separate public comment period for this matter. There will be an opportunity to use the hands-free feature of Zoom or to call in the number. When we do that, I would respectfully request that everybody keep their comments to 3 minutes or less, and anticipating that there may be more than a few. If your comments are substantially similar to comments that have been made by a predecessor comment, please keep your, please consider simply saying I agree with this prior comment.
Mr. Mayor, maybe I could just jump in here for a second before Kathy starts.
Sure.
I just wanted to comment, as you may know, I have a investment in one of the buildings that are on McKinley with Altunian Construction. And I noticed in the Plan Commission that Mr. Dixon recused himself based on the fact that Altunian Construction was doing some work in his home. And that's the case in my situation as well. So after talking with our city attorney, Julie Tabendorf, it seemed to make sense for me to not engage in the conversation and the voting on this matter. I'm very interested in it, obviously, because it's in our ward with Jennifer. And it's in a transitional area between downtown and the East Lake Forest Historic District. So it's an important conversation. And I'd very much like to participate, but I'm going to stay out of the discussion and out of the voting.
Actually, I'd like to have City Attorney Tappendorf make a couple of comments on that and maybe share your legal perspective on this decision by Alderman Morris, please. I think you're muted. You're muted, Julie.
Is somebody else muting me?
There you go.
Okay. It wasn't showing muted. Thank you, Mayor. So Alderman Morris and I have spoken about this, and I asked him about his interest in the ownership of a unit in the development. Reviewed both state statute and our ethics ordinance, and advised Alderman Morris that it was not the type of financial interest that would trigger either a statutory or a local conflict of interest that would disqualify him from participating. However, in speaking with Alderman Morris, and he mentioned that the Plan Commission member had stepped out for the same reason, he felt that from an appearance of impropriety situation, which is also in the ordinance, that he would step out in this. As I advised him, it was not a legal prohibited conflict of interest, but each individual official, city council member in a situation may decide on their own and make that determination on their own to step out of the discussion, and that's what Alderman Morris did.
Thank you, Julie.
Thank you. Well, we'll miss you, Jed.
I'm going to watch with great interest.
Are you ready for me, Mr. Mayor?
Yes. Kathy, please, and I guess there's a presentation associated with this.
Yes. Thank you, Mr. Mayor, members of the council. I am going to share my screen. Bear with me just a moment. Are you all seeing my screen?
Not yet.
No? Okay. Are you seeing my screen now?
Yes.
Thank you. Really three topics I want to review this evening. This is a recommendation that comes to you from the Plan Commission on the McKinley Road multifamily plan development. I would like to first start and explain what is before the City Council tonight, provide a little bit of background. I know all of you have reviewed the Plan Commission packets and I've heard much discussion about this. And then third, I would like to review the options before the council tonight for action. So what is before the council tonight? On January 13th, which was the fifth in a series of numerous Plan Commission meetings on the phase 3 of McKinley Road redevelopment, the Plan Commission, after hearing public testimony, considerable deliberation, there was a motion placed on the table to approve the zone change and plat of consolidation. That motion failed with 2 ayes and 3 nays, a 2-3 vote. And because the Plan Commission is a recommending body to the City Council, any action of the Plan Commission, any vote of the Plan Commission must come before the City Council for final action. Importantly, the Plan Commission did not forward a recommendation to the Council on the entirety of the phase 3 proposal. There was no vote taken on the special use permit, which would approve the overall development.
So what is before you this evening is consideration of the Plan Commission's recommendation on a request for a zone change and a plat of consolidation associated with the phase 3, the third phase of the McKinley Road redevelopment. Now, to put a finer point on that, the plat of consolidation really is a bit premature. That would actually come into play a bit later. Plat of consolidation would simply consolidate the various parcels, including, if approved, the parcel on which the zone change is requested. So the focus tonight really is on the zone change and not on the entirety of the development. So again, to put even a finer point on that, the matter's not before the council tonight. There is no proposal on the table, and the Plan Commission has forwarded no recommendation on making changes to the boundary of the historic district. Again, the Plan Commission has not forwarded a recommendation to the council on the entirety of the McKinley Road project. They have not forwarded a recommendation on the special use permit for the planned multifamily development, and the discussion before the council is not architectural design, massing, height, exterior materials, landscape, or hardscape. As you know, those specific items of any petition are considered, depending on what they are, by the Plan Commission and then by either the Building Review Board or Historic Preservation Commission. In this case, the Historic Preservation Commission and Plan Commission, if this moves forward in the future, would forward recommendations after they do their due diligence on those matters to the City Council. And this matter would come to the council in its entirety. So focusing on the zone change, just to step back a little bit, look at the broader area. I do want to pinpoint, hopefully you can see my cursor. My cursor is indicating the area of the property for which a zone change is requested. To orient you, this is Westminster, and this is McKinley and the railroad tracks. As you can see, this is in a transition area. Our most intense zoning in the Central Business District is right around Market Square, and not uncommon in zoning patterns as the business district moves to the north and moves to the south. The permitted intensity of development steps down, as it does too, both to the west and to the east. To the east, there's a pretty strong transition boundary as you move from Market Square to office zoning, to multifamily zoning, to smaller single-family lot zoning, to a bit larger single-family lot zoning, until you get to the R4 zoning, which is in the light yellow and actually moves all the way to the lake. To look at this area a bit closer, again, this is Westminster. This hatched area is the area proposed for rezoning. This parcel is currently part of a property addressed as 373 East Westminster. The developers recently purchased that property. That property is developed with a single family home, consistent with the R1 zoning, although the lot is significantly bigger than the minimum lot size in R1. This property here is the city property. This property, as well as properties across the street and then moving along Wisconsin Avenue, is zoned GR3, which is a residential zoning which allows single family, duplexes, and multifamily planned development. The property further to the west is actually zoned office. And this area was the subject of much discussion, probably starting before this, but focused discussion in 2011 with the Ad Hoc Cultural Corridor Committee, which I will speak to in just a moment. But just to focus a little bit more on what is requested. The zone change is requested for this parcel. It is 37 to 38 feet wide, a bit different on each end, and about 190 feet in length. the total acreage of the parcel proposed for rezoning is about 7,225 square feet. What would remain and what is not proposed to be rezoned is the majority of the lot to the east. That lot would remain acreage of about 18,600 square feet. The minimum lot size in the R1 district is just over 9,000 square feet. So this lot clearly exceeds the minimum lot size required in the R1 zoning district. Just to show you this in the context of the overall development, again, McKinley Road, East Westminster. This is the 333 condominium building, which was developed on this site in the late 1990s, replacing several single-family homes. This is phase 1 of the McKinley redevelopment project, and this is phase 2. Both of these buildings replace 3 office buildings that used to be in this location. These properties could have been redeveloped for office, which would have generated additional traffic. Certainly the existing office buildings could have remained, but there also was the potential to redevelop these properties with significant density. Again, you are not specifically looking tonight at the building configuration or the access or landscaping or any of that, but I did want to identify, at least in the current proposal, what this 38-foot wide strip is proposed to do if in fact it was to be incorporated in the development. It would allow the proposed condominium building to widen out, and it would allow the condominium building to encroach about 23 feet into that rezoned parcel, maintaining a setback of about 15 feet. The required side yard setback in R1 is 10 feet. The required side yard setback in GR3 is 6 feet. So that gives you a picture. Again, we are focusing on whether or not rezoning of this property is appropriate and should reasonably be considered as part of the phase 3 development, or whether it should be excluded from any consideration. That really is the question before the council this evening. A very quick review of the process. I did mention the Ad Hoc Cultural Corridor Committee, which was appointed in 2011 and looked in depth at the cultural corridor area. The cultural corridor area was named because at that time the Historical Society was on the city-owned property. The library obviously is to the south. Gorton Community Center is further to the south. At that time, it was not known if the Historical Society would renovate and expand the existing building, build a new building. Ultimately, as we all know, they left the site, moved to Washington and Deer Path, and essentially, instead of a cultural corridor, we now have a cultural triangle with the library anchored by the History Center on the east and Gorton Community Center. Following up on the discussion of the Cultural Corridor Committee, which envisioned over the long term that this area, the area that today is being talked about and partially already developed as the McKinley Road redevelopment project, as early as 2011, it was specifically identified that that entire area, including the city-owned property, was appropriate for multifamily residential development. In 2016 and 2017, the Plan Commission deliberated and ultimately recommended approval of a master plan for that area, which the council approved in 2017. That master plan envisioned 3 phases of a development project. Phase 1 of the project, the condominium building that is completed, was approved in 2017. Once it was recognized that there was significant interest in the condominiums at that location of the quality that were being constructed, the city reached out to the developers and began negotiations. The Property and Public Lands Committee was very involved in this discussion, and ultimately the City Council authorized the mayor and city clerk to enter into a purchase sale agreement. And that approval was issued in 2017. The purchase sale agreement was actually executed in 2018. Subsequent to that, in 2019, phase 2, the second building, the building that is now just being completed, was approved in 2019. And then in June 2019, the Plan Commission began consideration of the phase 3 project. As I mentioned at the start, to date, the Plan Commission has considered phase 3 over the course of 5 meetings. The project has changed continually, specifically in response to comments, directions, suggestions, questions from the Plan Commission, and importantly, also in response to questions and concerns raised by neighboring property owners. So again, focusing on the zone change, a very high-level summary. In considering a zone change, the Plan Commission and City Council do have to consider specific factors. And I have not written them out in their entirety here, but generally, the city is legally bound to evaluate zoning requests to determine whether they're compatible with surrounding uses and zoning. That is, uses immediately surrounding on all sides and in the larger area. To consider the impact on property values, both of surrounding properties as well as the subject property. To consider the benefits or lack thereof of the rezoning, not just in the short term, but over the long term, looking broadly at the Plan Commission focuses on land use related issues, impacts on neighbors, traffic, setbacks, those specifics. The council's purview broadens to also consider impacts on the central business district or economic impacts. The suitability of the property for uses permitted in the requested zoning district. As I mentioned, in the GR3 district, single family homes are permitted by right, duplexes are permitted by right, and multi-family planned developments are permitted through a special use permit. On the city property, based on the square footage, we would expect that 4 duplexes consisting of 8 units could theoretically be developed on the city property if it were simply offered for development. 8 units, interestingly, is the high end of what's proposed in the condominium building. 6 to 8 units are proposed in that third building. The Plan Commission City Council must also consider whether the requested zone change is consistent with adopted plans and policies. In this case, there is a history that the Plan Commission considered going back to 2011. And another factor is considering development trends in the area. We do have a historic district. This community has strong preservation tradition. But our historic district has continued to change, and the Plan Commission, the Historic Preservation Commission, and City Council all help to manage that change. Most often change in the historic district occurs through subdivision of property. And in fact, the 373 Westminster property, which is the western part of this, which is the subject of the requested zone change, was created through a later subdivision of a nearby property. The council does have options, as you always do. Tonight, the council could choose to accept the Plan Commission's recommendation and deny the zone change. If the council votes in that manner, then staff would work with the city attorney, and we would bring you back findings at a subsequent meeting to document the reasons for that denial, and going back to the factors that I spoke of a few moments ago. The City Council could overturn the Plan Commission's recommendation and approve the zone change. Likely, if you approved the zone change, we would delay an effective date until you saw the entirety of this project. We would not initiate that zone change or effectuate that zone change on simply a sliver of this property until we had a good understanding of the larger development. The third option that the council should consider is remanding the matter back to the Plan Commission. The Plan Commission, again, has considered this project in an ever-changing form in an effort to be responsive to comments over the course of 5 meetings. At this latest meeting, this zone change was requested because of the recent acquisition of the 373 property, in an effort to try and respond to some of the comments raised rightly or wrongly. If the council chooses to remand the matter, it will be important to provide direction. Remanding is not approving the zone change. It is simply saying to the Plan Commission, we believe the zone change may be worth considering in the context of the overall Phase 3 project. So go back, consider the project in its entirety, and forward a recommendation to the City Council. So those are the 3 options before you. There is a resolution, if you should choose the third option, there is a resolution in your packet for your consideration, again, to provide some clear direction to the Plan Commission. If this matter goes back to the Plan Commission would continue to hold public hearings. As the Plan Commission has at each of the 5 meetings, they are considering this development in the context of the approved master plan. That master plan has been provided in the council packet, or I'm sorry, in the Plan Commission packet, I believe, prior to all 5 meetings. So that master plan, the recommendations of the ad hoc committee, that framework has always been in place and would continue to be in place. You would be adding some additional direction through the resolution if you choose to take that approach. With that, Mr. Mayor, I will turn it back to you.
Thank you, Kathy. It's a good summary. I have a couple of comments, and then, well, first I have a question for Kathy. The several factors that you identified as the ones we are required to consider, is that just Lake Forest policy? Is that legal in nature? Could you please provide a little background on what those standards, where they come from, and what their sort of background is?
Sure, I'll make some initial comments and then I'd ask Julie to follow up. The city code does have specific criteria which must be considered for a zone change. Those criteria pull directly from the LaSalle and Sinclair factors, which are legal standards for zone changes. And with that, Julie, I will ask you to chime in with your expertise.
No, that's perfect. That's exactly correct. So every community has their local rezoning standards in their code, but those are always paralleled or modeled after the LaSalle Sinclair factors, which are established by the Illinois Supreme Court in 2 separate cases. And those cases have set the criteria or the factors that courts look at when they determine whether or not a zoning decision is appropriate or not. So whether or not a property is properly zoned, or in this case, rezoned, as the application is for rezoning, depends on an analysis of those factors. And those factors just loosely, summarize. They look at the context of the surrounding area, the trend of development, the surrounding zoning and uses in the area, among other factors. So that is part of the Plan Commission's duties, and also what, if this were to be challenged in court, what the court would apply to determine whether or not the zoning decision of the City Council is appropriate.
And Julie, can I just ask you to clarify one point? The city's decision must be based on those factors. The city certainly has liability if there's just a decision that we don't like something.
Correct. And that's what, too many zoning cases that I've had to defend where in some cases that has been the decision, has been we just don't like this particular development, or we just don't want to say yes, or in some cases communities have said yes and somebody challenges the decision. The court will apply, it's a very unemotional test to look at the factors and how they fit within that zoning context, whether it's the neighborhood, the uses, the existing zoning, how the comprehensive plan views this property, and trends for the development and the uses in the area. But that is exactly, if the city's decision is challenged, those will be the factors applied by the courts.
One more question, somewhat related. Kathy, in your description, you described the entering into a purchase and sale agreement between the city and the developers in 2018. And if you could just quickly identify some of the obligations that contract placed on the developers and on the city, and also where that stands right now, please. And maybe Julie, you might want to chime in on this as well.
I will note that the purchase sale agreement until the closing occurs is a confidential agreement. But Julie, I believe I can speak to some of the obligations, particularly those that have already been met. The purchase sale agreement does allow phase 3 to be developed with up to 2 buildings with no more than 14 units. The purchase sale agreement required the developer at the developer's cost to remediate the asbestos in the building and demolish the building, which they have done. The redevelopment agreement does specifically acknowledge that that the final development will vary from the master plan, that the master plan was intended to provide overall guidance on uses and layout. The purchase sale agreement recognizes that the development will occur in not more than 4 phases. The purchase sale agreement also establishes a requirement that for subsequent sales of the condominium units, I believe it's 0.05% of the sale price will come to the city and will remain in a train station restoration and repair fund. So that's a high level summary. Julie, I don't know if you have anything to add to that.
No, you hit all the high points. There are some issues related to the purchase and sale, and some related to the parameters that the city felt was appropriate for the future development of this property.
Thank you. Those are just, I think, some factors that need to be understood, and I wanted to make sure we covered them. Just in general, I'd like to reiterate before we get into our discussion some things that Kathy pointed out. This is one part, the decision we have tonight is one small part of an ongoing process. I have to say, based on some of the communications I've received from concerned citizens and some things I've seen on social media, that there may be the impression out there that somehow this is the ultimate approval, and it's not, or disapproval, and it's not. The project could go forward in a different form with or without the 38 feet. You got a perfectly buildable lot next door that can be and will be, at least in the plans, developed with a single family home, and it'll either have 38 feet of additional land or it won't. But that doesn't necessarily determine whether the condominium building happens. It just determines what it's going to look like, or might help it look a little better. Some people think it might look worse. I don't know. We'll have to see. The site plan approval is the matter for the Plan Commission, and they have not done that yet. So there's work to do there. And then once that's done, the ultimate historic preservation implications for the historic district, and also the design elements of the final building, are going to be reviewed and approved by the Plan Commission. And then at some point after all that happens, they would, if it's fully vetted and fully reviewed, it comes back to the city council for final approval. So that's a process that, so this, I guess this is not the end by any means, and this is just one step in an ongoing process of trying to pursue some of the objectives that have been well established for this area in terms of providing higher quality housing options for our residents within close walking distance to the train station and Market Square. So with that, I will open it up for comments from the City Council, questions, what have you.
Mr. Mayor, how would you like to proceed with the council? Do you want us each to provide our comments or remarks? Do you want to have
I think there may be further questions from the council of Kathy, of Jason, of City Attorney Tappendorf. There may be some observations that members of the council would like to make.
Yeah, I would ask that maybe we ask clarifying questions of Kathy first and then maybe go to our comments. Would that be fair way
That's
to
fine.
proceed?
Yes, that's fine.
Kathy, I have a question. Those standards for rezoning, I think, are very relevant to this conversation. And are standards that seems to me, either we should be applying tonight or we should remand this to the Plan Commission to specifically opine point by point on whether this rezoning meets those standards.
Yes, the standards. I'm sorry, were you finished?
Well, has the Plan Commission done that? Have they specifically opined on whether rezoning would meet the LaSalle St. Clair standards?
The Plan Commission report included a review of the standards, articulated the standards as well as findings. The Plan Commission vote was a 2-3 to deny a motion, to not approve a motion to approve the rezoning. So yes, the Plan Commission has considered those factors. And there's a lot of moving pieces. The zone change is a new piece of this petition. And direction from the City Council, not a final decision unless you choose to make a final decision, would help, I believe, the Plan Commission to evaluate the overall project. Certainly, if the City Council chooses tonight to uphold the recommendation of the Plan Commission and votes to deny the zone change or to approve the zone change, you should absolutely discuss those factors in depth, and then we would come back to you with findings. But certainly your direction could be to the Plan Commission that the zone change merits further consideration in the context of the overall project, if you choose to remand it.
Or we could remand it and say, we want them to opine specifically on the LaSalle and St. Clair standards.
And it would make sense to do that in the context of the entire project, of the overall project. That is normally how zone changes are considered by the City Council. The City Council normally wants to know what development is proposed if in fact a zone change is requested.
Mr. Mayor, I do have some thoughts, maybe I consider more comments on maybe a process that we should be going through, which is a little different than the 3 options that have been posed, but I don't know whether you want.
Can we hold that? Can we hold that and make sure we've got all the questions out?
Yeah, I'd be happy with that.
Thank you. Other questions or
So, Mr. Mayor, this is Alderman Kashgarian.
Yes.
Just for a point of clarification, either to Kathy or to Julie. So if I'm to understand you correctly, based on, and again, I'm not an attorney, but what we reference LaSalle Sinclair factors or standards, if we do not, and or the Plan Commission has not taken that into consideration and interpreted those properly, and we move to deny, are we then in legal jeopardy for not maintaining those zoning standards? Is that what I understand, or am I misunderstanding that?
No, I can jump in and Kathy, if she has any other thoughts, but I think what Kathy had said is if the city council is going to take one of the first two options, which would be either to deny the rezone or to approve the rezone, then the city council will need to go through the factors. And what we would ask is to be able to bring back findings if you want to proceed with either one of those options. We had prepared for the third option to remand it back because the city council wouldn't need to go through all of adopting its own findings. We do have a resolution ready to act on with respect to that third option, to send it back to the Plan Commission to relook at the standards, but also in the context of what the city has already approved in setting the master plan for this particular development.
Thank you. That was very helpful. And again, maybe echoing Alderman Rummel's suggestion, the remand, it certainly sounds like she is absolutely correct with that. Thank you.
Well, and I guess if I could step in too, to remind, or just to reiterate a comment Kathy made before, normally these kinds of things are determined by the council or finally approved by the city council in the context of a fully vetted project, where there's a site plan approval from the Plan Commission, where Historic Preservation has signed off on the design elements and the preservation aspects following their own standards, because they have a set of very specific standards they need to follow. So it would be pretty unusual for us to just be decisive on this particular item, this one small piece of a much bigger overall development proposal. Other questions or observations? Okay, well then maybe Alderman Bushman, now is the time for your thoughts, or at least preliminary. Maybe there may be some influence here from our public comment, which we'll take in a moment.
Certainly, I look forward to hearing from the public, although I think we all have been privy to a lot of input emails and other means of communication of people making comments. But let me go back to the Plan Commission session of January 13th. I know some of us, including myself, spent the 2 hours plus watching it. And certainly I want to extend my compliments to the Plan Commission for their efforts, their diligence, and the deliberations. And really, I think I do sympathize and understand where they ended up that night, dealing with some difficult issues here. Saying we really should get the input of the city council on the proposed zoning change, because if the council should indicate that it would be opposed to any such zoning change, they'd be wasting a lot of time talking about all the other issues that go into the fully vetting of the project, as you said, Mayor. And we've heard the arguments. We've looked at the nature of the beast, the strip of land that's at issue, how it may or may not impact the community, how it may or may not impact property values, and you have all those issues there. And so, I have a hard time saying that, we should either deny or grant it, at this stage without having the benefit of the fully vetted project to know what we're dealing with, because I think that's going to dictate in my mind, whether the 38 feet should be part of the project or not. If it really substantially produces a beneficial project result, to improves the project, benefits the community, then the rezoning looks, like something that certainly should be done if that's the effect on the project. But to get to that point to understand the pros and cons of the project, I'm wondering if we're missing something. And the thing I'm raising is the contribution that the Historic Preservation Commission can provide here, the HPC. And let me go through a little of the history that I understand that has occurred here vis-a-vis the HPC. Back in September 2019, the Plan Commission did indicate that it would appreciate the input of the HPC. There were further redevelopments in the project, so it was postponed a little bit, but again, December of 2019, the Plan Commission specifically requested the input of the HPC. And there's a quote in Director Cerniak's staff report to the that does cover this. This goes back to the December timeframe, where, let me get the quote here. The Plan Commission was asking the Historic Preservation Commission to particularly focus on 6 factors: the building massing, the roof forms, the height, the architectural elements and details, the streetscape, the landscape. And when it did go to the HPC, I think they had hearings in January and February of 2020. And based upon the project that was before them, they decided, and I'll go to Kathy's report again, they denied approval of the design aspects, expressing concerns, including concerns about the overall height and massing of the building and the architectural style and detailing. Recognizing these things have changed from that time, I guess I'm viewing the HPC as an important component for looking at the totality of the project to fully vet it, including through the HPC. So to me, rather than remand it now to the Plan Commission, should we be remanding it to the HPC, ask them to look at it, evaluate these subjects, which to me are very important to many of our community, and let that be factored in. I think it would be very helpful to the Plan Commission. I think it'd be very helpful to the City Council to get that input sooner rather than later. And let the process go through, let's say, the 2-step, HPC first, then the Plan Commission.
Kathy, would you like to comment on that?
Sure. The project would definitely go back, if you remanded it to the Plan Commission, would definitely go through both the Plan Commission and Historic Preservation Commission. And as the mayor said, ideally we would bring all of those recommendations to the council at once. It would be unusual for a project that at least didn't receive conceptual support from the Plan Commission to be thrown to the Historic Preservation Commission. If we could certainly think that through, which comes first.
Kathy, can I jump in here, Kathy?
Sure.
So I was the chair of HPC and I was on it for 6 years, and I think its sweet spot is once the land use and the zoning issues have been defined, it does the finishing touches on the project, focusing in on the exterior. There's 17 design criteria. There's also demolition criteria that evaluate if a historic home in the district is worth preserving, and it's really good at what it does, right? It's the architectural board in the historic district as the BRB is to the other parts of our community. And it works very well in conjunction with the Plan Commission. And this process has served our community very well. And I don't know why we would invert that and let the HPC assume the Plan Commission's role in this. It's just counterintuitive. It's backwards. So the Plan Commission has to establish land use and zoning issues. And then it goes to the HPC. And that's happened. And I saw, 20 petitions a month for 6 years. And that's the process that we went through. So I think the options we have on the table are fair, and we shouldn't reinvent our community development process to try to get to or manage an outcome that we want to see. I think we should trust the process that served our community well.
Just to point out, that's why I did go through the history. The Plan Commission, wasn't even as far as it is now in its review process, felt in September and again in December of 2019 that they wanted the input of the HPC. And the HPC is dealing with issues that are, I think, important in helping to define the project, helping the developer see what can work or will not work, and have it factored into the process. I think you get a better quality of a review by bringing the HPC in now, just as they intended to do and did do in 2019 and 2020.
Alderman Bushman, I would just add that at that September meeting, the Plan Commission did conclude that the project as then presented, the 3-story building, was consistent with the master plan. So they had at least gotten that far. So the Historic Preservation Commission, as Alderman Preschlack said, the Historic Preservation Commission's role is not to say there should be a building there or there shouldn't be a building there. The Historic Preservation Commission, once we know there's going to be a building on a particular site, then they look at the massing. So I understand what you're saying, and I think it may make sense to, if you choose to remand it, to have this go back to the Plan Commission so they can essentially finish the discussion they started on January 13th, find out where they are. Obviously, if they then forward a recommendation on the whole thing to the City Council, it's not worth the Historic Preservation Commission's time to review it. So there may be some back and forth on that. I hear what you're saying, and I think we can accommodate both kind of along the way that we did in 2019.
Other questions? Okay, well, at that, if there is no more comment or questions from the council, I would.
Mayor, I do have some prepared comments. I didn't know we were.
Well, would you like to wait until after public comment? Or do you want to make them now?
Whatever you're suggesting.
What we'll do is we'll listen to public comment, and then we will come back for sort of more synthetic comments and observations from the council. If you have specific points you want to make, you might want to wait until we hear all the public comment. So because you might choose to modify them based on that. If there are questions about process or where we are, to clarify that, that would be appropriate now. But I'll leave it to you.
Okay, very well. No, you proceed with the comments, public comments.
Thank you. I would now open up the floor to public comment. As I mentioned before, we'll have the phone number available. You can also use the hands-free option in Zoom. Realize, please, both with the telephone and with the hands-free, that there are some delays here. So it may take a moment once you're recognized to actually become live. So just bear with us on that. That's just a technological thing. I would just remind everybody once again, comments are to be kept to 3 minutes. And if you're going to say something similar to something that's already been said, please just let us know that you agree with the prior comment, and we'll try to accommodate everybody from a time perspective.
Pardon me, Mayor, can I also mention that we have received a number of emails from a lot of the public that are on, and I know that myself have read those thoroughly, so thank you for sending those in advance.
Yeah, I neglected to say that. It's we've gotten quite a few comments from people by email, and have tried to make sure, at least if we couldn't respond personally and in detail to every single one, that at least we've been able to share some factual information to try to clarify things a bit. And we welcome all that. We've listened to it. I've read every single email. I'm sure all the rest of us have as well. So we are highly aware and keenly sensitive to the sensibilities of the people who have spoken. I've received emails from people who are not residents of Lake Forest and who aren't residents of the state of Illinois. So this has been quite a campaign, and I guess we're happy to hear it again. So with that, I would wait to be instructed here in terms of comments that people would like to make.
We're going to promote Joyce. She'll do the calls. It just takes a second to get her in. There are two callers that are waiting. As soon as Joyce is in, we'll get those calls through.
Mr. Mayor, we have a caller on the line. Go ahead, please. Oh, caller, go ahead.
Yes, are you ready?
Yes, and please identify yourself and your address, please, as well.
Okay, yes. I'm Regina Lind, and I live at 338 East Westminster. I have to say my head is spinning at this moment, because when I was thinking about calling in, I had a lot of ideas which I see are not appropriate for this particular meeting, but there are a few things I would like to say. Number one, I've heard it at several meetings and in several correspondence I've had with the council members, the 10-year, it's been 10 years, we need to move forward, we need to get this done. And really that's not totally accurate. When we saw the first plan, there was a single family home on that, on the Historic Society property, which we supported. My husband's an architect and has been a developer, he's retired, but we're very sympathetic to development but we felt that it was important to keep that particular block from the little farmhouse down in the historic district, to keep it single family homes. So, and then the third thing I wanted to say was that before the proposed zone change, the building was back further. Yes. It was taller, but it wasn't as wide, and it was back further. And that was not great, but if we have to have it, which it appears we're probably gonna have to have that, some big building there, that would probably be better. And it would also make the lot, the 373 lot, probably look better with the single family home there. But really, that's what I have to say. But thank you for your time, and thank you very much to the council members who responded to our emails. We really appreciate that. Thank you.
Thank you very much. We have another caller?
We do.
The next caller is on the line. Go ahead, please.
Hello, this is Jeff Tarosian. I live at 401 East Westminster, which is just east of the subject property. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Yes, go ahead.
Thank you, Mayor, and thank you, council members, for giving us an opportunity to speak. This has been a very long and arduous process for the entire community. We obviously object to the zoning change for 373 East Westminster. We're joined by over 1,200 other people who've signed a petition objecting to the zoning change. The Plan Commission made the right decision denying the zoning change as it didn't meet the LaSalle-Sinclair factors. I understand some of the council members' concern about going through each of those, but I will tell you that the council in particular, I mentioned those factors at the Plan Commission meeting, and the Plan Commission went through them and decided that the zoning change did not meet the LaSalle-Sinclair factors. So I don't believe it would be appropriate to send it back to them to have them reanalyze that issue. They analyzed the issue and rejected it. Those factors are not met. The zoning change here would have an adverse impact on the community, which is one factor, would detract from the neighbors' use and enjoyment of their properties, which is another factor, and would greatly diminish the home values of not just the neighbors, but the whole East Lake Forest Historic District. The city property and the 373 property at issue tonight are in the Historic District and in the Overlay District. That was not true with buildings 1 and 2. They were zoned differently. They were not Historic District, not Overlay District. We didn't object to those buildings, but the city lot in 373 has to be judged differently because the law requires it. This district's on the National Register because of the streetscape of contributing structures. But it's also in the Overlay District, which the developers never mentioned. The Overlay District is different than the Historic District, and it has different boundaries. The Overlay District actually promotes open space and the pastoral sleeping land of our community. That's what makes us different from Winnetka. If anyone's heard anyone who wanted to move to Lake Forest over Winnetka say they wanted more elbow room and more pastoral landscapes, you can thank the Overlay District. Otherwise, we'd lose every day to Winnetka for people who are coming from the city. There's no way we believe a condo building on Westminster Streetscape meets the Historic District's protections of the streetscape or the Overlay District's protections of open space and pastoral land. I just want to end with 2 points that someone just raised and has been responded to with some of the petition members' objections here. We've been told also that this project's been 10 years in the making and that condos on Westminster are a done deal. It's not true. First, the city council has never approved or heard public comment for condos on Westminster. Remember, this project was originally 4 phases, not 3. The 3rd phase is behind the lot on Westminster. The lot on Westminster was supposed to be under the 2016 master plan, a single family or a duplex, and there were condos that were supposed to be on the lot behind it. Since that master plan, the developer consolidated lots 3 and 4 and now say, oh, condos were always supposed to be approved on Westminster. Condos have never been approved by the city council on Westminster and have never been considered by the city council to be on Westminster. The condos were only supposed to be on the lot behind the single family or the duplex on Westminster. But the other comment that I'll end with that's really important here is this hearing has nothing to do with the city lot. This hearing only has to do with the 373 lot and whether to change zoning on that lot, a lot that would residential single-family zoning, a lot in the historic district, and a lot in the overlay district promoting open space. And that was rejected in conjunction with a special use permit application that laid out the entire project that the developer wanted to do. And the Plan Commission went through the Sinclair LaSalle factors and decided that that zoning change in the context of an entire site plan that I know you've asked for was not appropriate. And we believe that this city council should adhere to the Plan Commission's deliberated process and uphold that vote. Thank you.
Thank you. Appreciate your comments. Are there other members of the public that are either raising their hands or on the phone?
Yes, Mr. Mayor, I still have 4 more phone calls waiting. I will promote them. Hold on one second. I have another caller on the line.
Good evening, everyone. Can you hear me? Okay, my name is Leslie Lardino, and I live at 351 East Westminster. And so I do have a comment. So the overall site plan that was presented this evening by Kathy did not show my house, which is the 351 house. It only showed the 333 condo building. So you could say in some regard that my house is the transition where the condos transition to single family homes. So I'm kind of confused as to why my house was removed from the plan. So I'd like to see if somebody could speak to that. I'd appreciate that.
Kathy, could you comment briefly on
Sure.
that?
I know your house, Ms. Lardino, was shown on other plans. It's just that the plans we pulled tonight perhaps didn't show it, but we will make sure going forward that your house is also noted. I know that certainly the Plan Commission is well aware of your house. It's been the point of discussion a number of times.
Is this the gray house we're talking about? The gray Victorian?
Yes, yes.
I certainly am well aware of it being there, and
Yeah,
I
it's
assume
been-
that other
it's been
council is too.
Many of the renderings that we've looked at and the packages that have been sent around. I think Kathy was just trying to simplify her presentation as much as possible here.
Okay.
We've also done
Maybe that
some site
explains.
visits too. We've also I know I've personally walked the site as well. I think many of the councilmen have.
Right, many of us have, but I wonder if Ms. Mardino wants to make some comment with regard to her home and the impact of this development. If she wants to make some further comments.
So thank you. So I'm approaching 4 years now of construction around my home. And to say jaded is somewhat of an understatement of how myself and my young family are feeling. It's just been constant noise pollution, dirt. In my house, the side of my house is totally covered in dust, and in the summer particularly. And then every morning outside the side of my house, there's like a slew of traffic waiting to get into the construction site. And as of last week, my husband had to email the construction manager to let them know that could they just move the cars away from the side of the street so that they can come when the gate is open, because it's getting to a point now where the traffic is merging onto Westminster. So it is somewhat of a burden, and that has been going on consistently for the last year and a half. But in general, we are approaching 4 years of construction from condo 1 and condo 2 buildings. And now to think that we'd have a Council 3 building right on the side of us to think the dust and the you know, the traffic coming along the side street is just, yeah, I don't even want to think about it. We've just been through a lot. I have 2 young kids, and you know, they've just kind of become accustomed to it. They've become accustomed that there's just construction every day outside of that. Leading up to that, like last year, I went up to the construction site and approached them to clean the street in Westminster because it was full of muck and debris. And they did do it, but that's something that I should not have to prompt. That should be taken into consideration and should be checked if we're bringing in large trucks of soil and what have you. So it has been somewhat of a burden on us.
Well, I'm personally sorry to hear that, and I hope that maybe Kathy, we can, as a city, take some steps to improve the respect that the developers are showing for the immediate neighbors.
We'll continue to work on that.
Thank you very much for your comments, and I'm sorry you've had to go through this.
Thank you so much.
Do we have another? Sounds like we have a couple more callers.
We do.
We do. Hold on 1 minute. Okay, caller, go ahead.
Hi, I wanted to thank everybody on the council for listening here this evening. My name is Anna Block and I live at 441 East Westminster with my daughter and my fiance. My fiance and I both grew up here in Lake Forest. He grew up on the west side. I was on the east side, just down the road on Sheridan. Growing up here, I was always so proud and in love with our beautiful Market Square community and the surrounding area. And being actually a huge architecture and history lover, I've spent my early adult years admiring, you know, beautiful Market Square as well as the surrounding homes in the area and everything that our community has to offer here. By allowing this zoning change in our historic district, we feel as this is changing the historical preservation that our community not only holds true to these east side neighborhoods, but also, again, Market Square. I believe, you know, there should be no changes to the current zoning ordinances, nor special use permits granted to the current zoning in the East Lake Forest Historic District. Specifically, I am opposed to attempts to change single-family residential zoning to permit the construction of Phase 3 of the McKinley Road development. We would love to retain the charm and historic integrity of our community and the boundaries that the city put in place many years ago to ensure the privacy that so many people come to Lake Forest to enjoy. To note, just recently what a previous community member has also raised and brought to attention, there is quite no comparison between Winnetka, Glencoe, Kenilworth. There's just no comparison to Lake Forest in this community. We are known for our beautiful Market Square shopping town, all of the beautiful like historical surrounding homes that Market Square is surrounded by. And, you know, this is just not something that you will find anywhere else along the North Shore. Being a young couple that has just purchased their first home in Lake Forest, you know, we did look in other communities, remembering growing up here, you know, having such a special community that we both grew up in. We did choose Lake Forest. However, you know, having other young couples and young friends that are looking in surrounding areas, you know, a lot of them do say Lake Forest has, you know, a community in a town like no others along the North Shore, and this is why we chose, you know, this area. So we want the city council to vote no to a zoning change in our historic residential district. We want the council to uphold the plan commission's no vote to a zoning change. And we feel that condo 3 does not, we would like that condo 3 does not transition into our residential streets. And, you know, we feel that it will negatively impact the value of our properties in the surrounding areas. And to speak to the construction and the loud noise in the area, yes, we've only been here for a year and a half. However, taking my, you know, young daughter under a year old on walks and things like that, and this is just only having been here for a short period of time, we have experienced some of the similar construction issues and traffic issues that Westminster has adhered to with the heavy construction going on in the area. I wanted to thank everybody for listening tonight, and we would really hope that you would consider, you know, maintaining the historical Market Square and surrounding homes.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Welcome to Lake Forest, or welcome back, I guess.
Thank you. Yeah, welcome back. Thank you so much.
Mr. Mayor, we still have 3 more phone calls on hold.
What I'm gonna do moving forward, when the 3 minutes is up, I'll just interject and say the word time. No one can hear my timer. So I'm not being rude, I'm just interjecting and letting them know that the 3 minutes is passed.
Thank you, Biddy.
You're welcome.
Go ahead, Ms. McGovern.
Courtney McGovern. I reside at 79 North Mayflower in Lake Forest, and I just want to thank you, Mr. Mayor, as well as the council. I know you all received my letter, which I will not repeat. Obviously, you have that for reference, and you know that I also disapprove of any zoning change. And I applaud those previous callers and support their comments, especially the gentleman who also reinforced the overlay district distinction and open space. Additionally, it's very clear that, you know, for the large amount of voices, both through petitions and through participation in committee meetings and council meetings, you know, that there is a true love for our city, its open space, its historic integrity, you know, all of which are key marketable distinctions of Lake Forest. And we all know that Lake Forest is desperate to attract residents, so it seems counterintuitive to adopt zoning changes that will work against the city in that respect. I did also want to comment that it seemed as though some of the comments today as it related to the size of the 38 by I guess what was it, 100 parcel that we're discussing here for zoning change, that it was constantly referred to as sort of diminutive and that it was, quote, just a sliver. I feel as though these comments are biased and seem to try to validate you know, that the developer should be owed, you know, this sliver, quote unquote, of land. And I just feel that that's a bias that, you know, is skewing the true principles of a zoning change. One thing that hadn't been addressed, and I know there was a comment in your fact cues that has not changed over the several edits in the fact cues, but you know, I still don't quite understand. I'm hoping perhaps somebody can address this. Why, if this zoning change were adopted, that this would not become a very dangerous
precedent, and certainly a very ugly precedent for other areas of the historic Lake Forest. And why would this preclude another developer, or perhaps even the same developer, from future petitions to seek similar exceptions to zoning and changes in other areas of historical East Lake Forest?
Mr. Mayor,
If you could please address that, I would appreciate it. Thank you very much for your time.
Thank you very much for your comments. We have additional callers?
Great.
I have Mr. Curry on the line.
Good evening. This is Todd Curry. I live at 360 East Westminster in a house that was designed by Charles Pratt in the subdivision that still holds his name. We've seen a lot of great activity over the the past 4 years we've been enduring this in the neighborhood. And I think a couple of points have been raised that have caused me to take a bit of pause. There's great reference, certainly on Kathy's part as Director Cerdiak, as she's helped move this project through the various committees. Could I see, just by show of hand, whom among the aldermen were on the Cultural Corridor Committee circa 2011?
I was.
I take that. So, I'm sorry, one member? And whom among the aldermen approved the so-called master plan in 2016?
Mr. Mayor,
Yeah, we're not going to answer questions this way. This is not.
No, that's okay. I just asked for a show of hands to be sensitive to that. The master plan is wielded at times as if it's some sort of immutable tome that we shall not, deviate from. And at other times, it's wielded as a document that's subject to some change. And in fact, we learned tonight that the private purchase sale agreement that none of us is privy to includes some changes to the master plan as accommodations to the developer. So I'm a bit confused as to the canonicity of this master plan and to the extent to which this development has already been spelled out in precise detail. If it's a set of guidelines, if it's a set of goals, then that frankly has some bearing on the situation as it stands today, where frankly, considerable development has been done. And I think the city should take a pause. It has not been mentioned yet this evening, but the library is concerned with its physical space. It's now stands in the shadow of a gorgeous building on McKinley, but it stands in the shadow nevertheless and is contemplating what its role in the cultural corridor should be. So it's far outside the scope of the meeting this evening, and I apologize for that, but I would ask the City Council to consider whether hearkening back to some vague recollection of a plan 10 years ago and adhering to at times so strictly to the guidance of this master plan, it serves the community when we've implemented now a series of changes and frankly should take some pause on what Mrs. Lardino described adequately has been a rather protracted city-sanctioned construction project in a residential neighborhood. Lastly, just as a matter of, to sort of put something on the table and hopefully put it to bed, at several points in this meeting and in prior meetings, some of the city staff have threatened that the city has permission to throw some number of duplexes up on the site, the third phase site. I would really caution against that language, as it is quite inflammatory to many of us who could not fathom a series of duplexes being put on that lot. That would certainly erode the character of the neighborhood more than anything that's come thus far. Thank you very much.
Thank you for your comments.
Mr. Mayor, we have another call on hold. I'll put him through in a minute.
Okay, thank you.
I have Ms. Downing on the phone. Go ahead.
Hi, it's Sally Downey at 475 East Westminster. I hadn't planned on talking because I've already sent all you emails and I've said plenty. But I was a little struck by something the mayor said after the city staff gave their presentation. And the mayor, you said it was a good summary. And in my opinion, that was really not a summary. It felt more like a promotional ad for the condo developer. The city has been an active participant and proponent negotiating the buying of the church property. The city has been an active participant and proponent in negotiating extra green space between condo 3 and the library. The city has also been an active participant and proponent of the developer to pursue purchasing 373 Westminster. I wish I felt we neighbors were represented and supported as well. The neighbors in HPC asked for less mass, but we never ever asked for the developer to accomplish that by buying adjacent land and potentially getting a zoning change. The city shifted building 2 and the city and the developer shifted building 2 and shifted the building 3 location, thereby pushing it closer to Westminster. We do not owe the developer 6 to 8 units or a profit. You stated, Mayor, that the condo could be built on the 2 city lots. Since that is the case, please do not support this zoning change. Thank you very much for your time.
Thank you very much.
Okay, Mr. Mayor, we have another call coming in, actually 2 more. Could hold on 1 second.
Pardon me, Mayor, I also saw there were hands raised. I don't know when we want to bring those in or if there's a priority that we typically follow.
We would take phone calls first, followed by raised hands.
Okay, I have Maggie Coleman on the line. Go ahead.
Yes, I would, let me kill my volume here. I live at, first of all, 461 East Westminster in a 1932 Stanley Anderson house. I have a question for you, which if you can, I would love you to answer at the end of a couple comments. The 2011 Cultural Corridor Task Force, which was chaired by former Plan Commissioner and Second Ward Alderman Tim Newman, and including 2 future mayors, Rob Lansing and our current mayor, George Pendleon, identified in its report a key objective, quote, to develop a landscape plan for a front yard on Westminster of city-owned property to establish a residential character for the streetscape in this transition area, unquote. The referenced front yard and transition area is, I assume, the large portion of the city parcel formerly home to the Historical Society with its Westminster lawn. Other than for financial gain, why was this objective abandoned in favor of a potential 26,000 square foot building? And I really do hope you will comment. Thank you very much.
Thank you. We'll save comments for after the public comment is completed, please.
Okay, I have another caller. Hold on. I have Mr. Swarthout on the line. Go ahead, Mr. Swarthout.
Good evening. Tom
Tom Swarthout, 987 Maplewood Road, Lake Forest, Illinois. I'm in a home that was designed by Tom Swarthout in 1995. A couple comments I wanted to make. First, this is what happens when COVID happens and you run out of things to watch on TV. Secondly, I heard the comment about 1,200 residents of Lake Forest signing a petition to support the rezoning, or not to support the rezoning. So many of us in this community are thrilled with what was put up on Westminster or McKinley. I don't know if those in the audience remember what was there, but I think the petitioner did an outstanding job. I want to remind people of what is happening in our surrounding communities, and the loss of Whole Foods, the loss of Costco. So many of us are frustrated with a lack of action because there are a number of residents who get together and oppose a project. This is a project that is highly desired. There's a real fundamental change that's happening in the marketplace. Retail has had a completely upheaval, and we need to be a little more progressive and attract people into this community. Most of the people that have moved in the condominiums are Lake Forest residents, and it's been a huge benefit, I think, to the community as a whole. So I'm in a historic district. I live by Lake Forest College. They put up a 5-story, almost condo-like dormitory. Had no impact in our quality of life, and I think this will have very little. So I would strongly urge the council to complete their commitment to this petitioner and have a little courage and move forward. I think the vast majority of this community has no idea that this dust up is occurring, and most people would support this because it's a real benefit to this community. We need to kind of challenge the other communities around us, whether it's Libertyville, what's happening there, what's happening in Vernon Hills, what's happening in Highland Park. Look at the change in the demographics and the kind of housing that's being built. No longer are we going to be a community thought of just the big estates. We want to attract young families, and I think this is a real opportunity for our community. So with that, Mr. Mayor, thank you again. And I want to point out that Jim Preschlack looks a lot smarter on TV than he is in person. So thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you very much. Appreciate it. More callers?
I might have one more. Hold on one second. No more callers.
Thank you, Joyce. Do we have some people with their hands up that would like to communicate via Zoom?
We do. We're going to start with resident Rami Lopez.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Before I even begin, I prepared remarks tonight, and I prepared them for 4 minutes because that's what the new website says I might have. So I hope you will indulge me. I'll make it as fast as I can. Thank you. I'm Rami Lopat, and I live at 410 East Woodland Road in Lake Forest, the First Ward Historic District. You, the City Council, have a mantra, which is trust the process. I suspect you might want to remand this matter back to the Plan Commission, which is your option number 3 with an already written resolution. But I'm asking you to choose option number 1, to deny the requested zoning change and lot consolidation. Option 1 is the right thing to do for the following reasons. Option 1 shows that you believe what you are always telling the public to believe, that we should trust the process. The process already took place. The Plan Commission voted 3-2 to reject the expansion of condo number 3 into the historic Westminster residential neighborhood. It was too much mass on Westminster. So I ask you, please do not force these volunteers into another forever long debate about a rock versus a hard place. Support these commissioners and back the difficult decision that they made. Leave the current R1 zoning in place with no consolidation. As I noted in my letter to you, the project is just a bad idea in its face. The 2 city-owned lots total less than an acre. The proposed demolition sits on half an acre. If I were to build a single-family home on the 2 lots, you'd allow me about 5,000 square feet. This condo building is huge in comparison. It has a footprint of over 13,000 square feet and an overall floor area of well over 26,000. Does that sound compatible? It's just too huge to become part of a single-family neighborhood to the east. The developers call their idea transition. No, sorry, the transition was established already. The condo to residential transition precedent was the Victorian house at 351 Westminster, the one that is not shown on the diagram you saw tonight. Here's another reason why you should deny more expansion. The condo was already rejected by the HBC process because of its mess in design. The building's design failed the standards of the historic district. To go even further, the project would likely not pass muster under our special use criteria. I think the special use petition process would fail on 6 criteria, all having to do with compatibility plus construction's impact on the enjoyment of properties. Let me say this a different way. The developers desperately want to take Westminster for their condo street address. The name Westminster adds a priceless cachet to their marketing. To satisfy this desire, however, nearby residents must give up the quality of their historic neighborhood to the developer. And I say that's too steep a price. The trade-off is not equitable. Last, my big issue is that the city should have planned the library and the city-owned lots together into one cohesive master plan. That was never discussed as an option. I'd like you to take the initiative and give the direction to city and library staffs to do so. Your direction would also relieve a lot of growing angst in our community. By taking what you think might be the easier path and sending it back to plan, you are, as a former city manager might have said, kicking the can down the road. This is hard. Hundreds of hours have been spent. But once in a while, projects just fail on their own merit, no matter how we try to make them work. This is one of them. Please vote to deny the zoning change and move forward with a better idea for this land. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
The next person who has their hand raised is Teresa Carangelo.
Once again, I live at 1301 Northwestern Avenue. My parents live in the historic district of 265 East Woodland Road. My family's been here for over 50 years. This place, East Lake Forest, means something to us. Putting this condo, a 3-story condo, right next to a Victorian house is absurd. Do we really need $1.5 million condos again? Is Lake Forest, city of Lake Forest, because it's sure not the residents, really looking for that? What are you guys getting out of it? Because the residents want to keep the identity of what Lake Forest means, which is the historical value, the historical look of what Westminster is all about. This needs to go back to the historical developers and show them what they are really going to be doing. Because I don't think they really understand that this is actually not going to be 2 stories. It's actually going to be 3 stories now. And it's not going to be only 2 condos. It's going to be between 6 to 8 condos. And like the lady that talked before, if she wanted to put in a house, a single family house the same size, the city will deny it immediately because of the zoning restrictions. I've dealt with zoning restrictions from you guys when I lived with my parents. And we had the property and it still got denied. But you guys are considering option 3 when hundreds of Lake Forest residents and people that don't even live in our state are rejecting this. And for Mr. Swarthout to say that, well, we didn't get Costco, we didn't get Whole Foods. Well, Mr. Swarthout, that wasn't the residents' decision. That was the city council's decision. That wasn't ours. So that's not 2 apples. You can't compare that. That's not our loss. That's the city's loss because we didn't make that decision once again. And we're asking the city to make our decision for us because you are speaking for us. It is a mess on Westminster. If we had school, the traffic would have been insane, but due to COVID, it's less traffic out there. And let me point one more factor that hasn't been mentioned. The look of it, the historic factor has been considered. Let's talk about the flooding on the east side of Lake Forest. Have we considered flooding issues? When we put this humongous condo on Western Avenue, my building has flooded constantly. My parents' house has flooded constantly. Let's think about flooding. Let's think about our flooding, our sewer, because you guys don't have the money to fix our flooding issues. And we don't have the green space, but you guys are able to put this humongous 6 to 8 condo unit. We want green space. We don't want this unit. Please consider our concerns and think about it. Option 1, not 2 or 3. Thank you. Oh, and one more thing. That summary that Katie put up, that was completely biased. That was one-sided. That was not 2, and that's not appreciated. I do agree with the other people that have said that. Thank you, and I hope you guys make the right decision tonight and moving forward.
Thank you very much.
Mr. Mayor, we have Tim Newman with his hand raised to be next.
Can you hear me?
Yes, sir.
Sir.
I heard my name mentioned almost in vain as having been involved with the Central Corridor project 10 years ago, and I served on the Plan Commission for a while and then on City Council. So I thought in that time that I've been able to sit in on the development of a number of projects, including Lake Forest Hospital, Kelmscott Park, and some other smaller projects, which I would agree to some extent with Tom Swarthout that I think residents are not really looking at some fairly large trends that are going on in this country that we are not immune from, and that is we're seeing the very, very large estates become unmarketable. What was once selling at $5 million is lucky to get $2.5 million. So there's clearly no demand for that. So it's incumbent on us, the city leaders, to find readaptive uses of these things. And if you'll recall, the buildings that were replaced on McKinley were fairly low quality and very unattractive. And so from that aspect, I think the first two phases of the project have been a success, as was Kelmscott Park, I think. So it may not be in every local resident's interests to see another condo building go up. And I think that there are still some issues with the zoning and the change in the zoning that needs to be worked on. But I urge the council to move forward because whole chunks of North Shore life are becoming obsolete as time goes on, and we need to find a better way to find a future for our city. Thank you.
Thank you, Tim.
There is no longer anyone with their hand raised in the audience.
Okay, thank you. With that, I would bring it back to the council for discussion, comments, observations before we try to move this forward.
I have some
Whatever we decide to do.
remarks, Mayor.
Sure.
Like most tuning into this meeting tonight, I feel the gravity of the issue before us concerning the direction of Phase 3 of the McKinley Development Project. While I fully recognize tonight we are considering a specific aspect of the petition acted on by the Plan Commission, I believe it incumbent upon us to take this moment to reflect on the third phase as a whole. There is inherent tension between planning and preservation, and today I find no clear and decisive path yet for this body. I fully recognize the painstaking time and work invested in this process since the concept for this residential development commenced 5 years ago, 5 years after the city began to envision the redevelopment of McKinley in the central business district. I also appreciate the numerous iterations prepared by the petitioner in response to feedback from the Plan Commission and community members who have actively participated in an inclusive and deliberate planning process. We have a duty as council members to balance multiple city priorities. First, it's our fiduciary responsibility to ensure the city's financial stability. Of equal measure are our roles overseeing astute city planning and the preservation of the character and characteristics that make Lake Forest one of the most desirable places to live in the country. Record-breaking home sales in 2020 confirm more young home buyers are moving to Lake Forest to raise their families. Moreover, empty nesters in Lake Forest are choosing to stay in town, and others from area suburbs are putting down their roots here. Phase 1 and Phase 2, in my judgment, have materially elevated the streetscape of McKinley where they sit. I have no doubt in the petitioner's ability to execute a third phase of this development that achieved the same level of architectural excellence. Further, the city of Lake Forest indeed has a housing issue it needs to address of developing more easy living residences for the growing number of aging citizens who want to remain in town. For these reasons, I am in favor of completing the McKinley Development Project with a third structure, so long as it is appropriate for the space and the place it will occupy. At the same time, I'm mindful and uniquely familiar with historic preservation. I grew up in Boxford, Massachusetts, a town incorporated in 1685 on Boston's North Shore. It's 25 square miles, adheres to two-acre zoning to maintain the rural character of the town, and has almost no commercial development, with the exception of one community store, an ice cream stand, and a farm stand. I cannot imagine Boxford any other way, and I'm grateful its stewards preserved its historic integrity. Nor can I imagine Lake Forest compromising its unique charm, unparalleled natural beauty, and especially its extraordinary historic district. Finally, our government relies on commissions and boards composed of resident volunteers qualified and dedicated to the thorough process of considering and directing important city matters, ultimately making recommendations that align with our guiding principles and citywide master plan, including the restoration of our beloved library and the cultural corridor or cultural triangle initiative. So it is out of respect for the Plan Commission's role and my confidence in our planning process, I will vote to remand the zone change to the Plan Commission for reconsideration. Thank you.
Thank you, Jennifer. Other observations or comments?
Mr. Mayor, just one comment. Thank you. We've heard a lot of opinions and strong opinions tonight, and I do want the residents that are paying attention or watching still to know that each and every one of us have read every email, and these are things that we do take to heart. We come at two different situations from different places, and we try and work together collaboratively. Community input is important. And we do genuinely appreciate it. And I'm proud to be part of a community that can interact like this. I do want to thank you too, Mr. Mayor, for indulging us all, especially with an issue like this that I know does generate a great deal of passion. And I hope at times, even when people do become very passionate, we can do it in a respectful manner. Thank you, and thank you to all the callers. I just look forward to moving forward with this process. Thank you.
Hey, Mr. Mayor, it's Jim Preschlack. I wanted to share my thoughts with folks. I wanted to thank Kathy for always doing a great job facilitating this process and our community development. I'd also like to thank all the citizens that have been involved and voiced their opinions. It really is important. And the three options in front of us, I think option 1 and 2, it's really hard to either accept or reject a zoning request without the context of the entire project. So, I'm also in favor of remandating it to the Plan Commission. But I also wanted to provide some feedback and guidance because, it really is important that they go through their process to get a full package of the proposed project and a recommendation, either yay or nay. It's almost like the Plan Commission got towards the end and just ran out of gas and just kind of needed some advice and, almost had a phone a friend moment here. And so I think it's important on us to give some honest feedback about where we stand on this issue, because it is a balance. And so I'll just kind of give you some feedback that I thought of as I read all the material and was and just listening to folks. And the big headline for me is I'm not opposed to any zoning change on the portion of the adjacent R1 parcel in our historic district if the Plan Commission believes it's the best project for the space. Okay, and that's in the context of the master plan, the adjacent space and land use, and ultimately, based on the LaSalle criteria and their discussion. So I really think if it's 3-story, 2-story, setback, massing, I really trust the Plan Commission and Kathy's ability to facilitate that with the input from all the neighbors that are around this development and people that care about it, frankly. A lot of issues have come up both in email and tonight that are worried about precedent changes, and I just wanted to address that and share with you my perspective. I'm not worried about setting a precedent for zoning changes in the historic district at all, because we really, as a community, have take each petition very seriously and look at it in its context, both in zoning and land use and building design and massing. And between the Plan Commission that does the top-down work around all the key land use questions and the HPC and the BRB, and frankly, the Zoning Board of Appeals. I mean, there's a Zoning Board of Appeals because people appeal our zoning. And when I was on the HPC and all these petitions were in the historic district, if we went too far on preservation, we used to say, guys, this isn't a museum, we have to adapt. Now, at the other end of the spectrum, you can't just build things that are gonna not be mindful of the character of our community. So it is a balance, but just be rest assured that every petition and the people that serve on the HPC and the Plan Commission look at it as one petition, and they don't look at it as precedent setting. I never, ever heard any deliberations on the HPC where people said, well, there's precedents that do this, let's do it. You go through a process. The HPC went through a very deliberate process to tear down a Stanley Anderson house 3 blocks from this proposal, right across from the church, a Stanley Anderson home. And the property owner bought the property and wanted to build it, a new property. And you know what, and the home changed over years. And if we had just said, Stanley Anderson home, we can't touch it, we probably would have had a court case from the property owner. But we wouldn't have served the broader goal of preservation, which is having some flexibility to keep our town vibrant and competitive. And the house turned out phenomenal. And the Stanley Anderson was a big compromise and had some changes over the years. It was the right decision, but we went through 6 criteria around the demolition criteria, had the debate, and we didn't set a precedent because every house, every petition is unique. And I really want to hammer that home because there's a lot of thoughtful people serving on the boards and commission, and we can't just accept or reject a plan commission. We have to help them do the work. And so I just couldn't think of accepting this or rejecting it. And I really feel like it's important to give the feedback and the support of that process as council members. I'm very encouraged if the rezoning toggles the building massing and allows some flexibility of design between 3-story and 2-story and different setbacks. And I'm confident that the Plan Commission and the HPC in tandem can come up with the best solution for that space. You know, I also think it's really unrealistic to think of it as open space or a park. You know, I mean, you always kind of get to, well, who's gonna buy the park? Is it the taxpayer? And we're also responsible for, for the silent taxpayers and to get land productive, to pay property taxes, to meet the needs of the future and also being consistent with all of our zoning laws and land use with the flexibility to meet the future needs. And I'm confident that the Plan Commission and the HPC can do that. So I really thank everybody that's gone through the process. I do think the Plan Commission needs our honest feedback and support and encouragement to continue, so they give us a fully baked recommendation that we can either say yes to or no to. Thank you.
Thanks, Jim. Alderman Notes.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. One of the callers made the comment about being beholden to the master plan. And certainly in my mind, and I think in the city's interest, our master plan is a living and breathing document. It's not been chiseled into stone, and it needs to evolve over time to the needs of the city and the community so that we stay vibrant in the future. And it's these opportunities that we have like today, we're evaluating what is the downtown Lake Forest going to be to best serve the demands of our residents into the future. And there's certainly been a growing trend of residents being more interested in having proximity to being downtown. And well, people aren't necessarily taking the train to the city today. God willing, that will resume, but nonetheless, it's walking to Walgreens and walking to the grocery stores. The opportunity to help encourage that growth downtown benefits stores and all of that. So there are a huge amount of attributes, and I fully support the zoning that's necessary to allow the developer to expand the property as beyond what the current restrictions allow. But I do encourage the Plan Commission to be very mindful of managing the buffer zone between it and the neighbors around it. Making sure that it's a tasteful massing. And toward that end, over the last year or two that I've been on city council, seeing the evolution of their plans, they've made great strides into helping minimize that impact on their neighbors. And so I just encourage Plan Commission to really to keep that at heart as they take this back under review, assuming the city councilor supports through remanding it. Thank you.
Thank you. Other members of the council that would like to comment?
I would like to speak, Mr. Mayor. First of all, I'd like to ask Kathy a question that was raised by Mr. Tarosian when he talked about the overlay district. Can you clarify exactly what that is and what impact, if any, that has on this development?
Sure. The Historic Residential Open Space Preservation District is a district that requires careful consideration and flexibility in our regulations in order to protect existing historic structures and significant natural environmental areas, wetlands, woodlands. Some of you who have either been on other boards or commissions, who have been on the council for a while, we most often see planned preservation subdivisions or conservation subdivisions come through using that process. Middle Fork Farm, for instance, 200 acres. A good part of the property was zoned R5, 3 acre lots. The rest was zoned 1.5 acres. What you see today are 72 lots, none of which are 3 acres. But what we were able to do using the overlay district is to allow the developer to achieve the density by right, but making smaller lot sizes, adjusting setbacks, and in exchange, in that case, we preserved the Elua Farm buildings, wetlands, and significant wooded open space. In the case of this property, yes, it's in the overlay district, which requires that the development be approved through a special use permit, which will be part of the process. The Historic Preservation Commission and City Council formerly approved the demolition of the Masonic Temple that was located on the property. That structure was in deteriorating condition. That structure is no longer there, and I would represent that the city property in its current condition does not have significant environmental value. And in fact, a good part of it is hardscape or hard packed gravel. Certainly the front portion, which is currently grass, actually is currently part of the construction yard, but in the past has been grass, but again, not a significant environmental feature. So with respect to this property, the overlay district certainly requires approval through a special use permit, but there's nothing on this property itself that would require specific preservation. Certainly what we're hearing through the process is, and certainly some comments tonight, to assure that if something is built here, whatever it is, that it is, that it recognizes the fact that the property is within the historic district. So Alderman Rummel, the overlay district in this case really doesn't come into play as much as it would in an Everett Farm, or Middle Fork Farm, or a subdivision where there are significant environmental areas to protect and preserve.
Thank you for that clarification, Kathy. That's very helpful. You know, like the rest of my fellow aldermen, we certainly have studied this issue. We have read emails. We have looked at Plan Commission meetings. We have looked at HPC minutes. I know we've all done our due diligence with this, and it's not an easy decision to make. However, I think that the question of whether we should rezone this parcel in sort of the legal way of looking at it, the question is not yet ripe for our consideration at the council. And for that reason, I would favor remanding it back to the Plan Commission and also to the HPC to look at the overall development. If in order to make this overall development the most desirable it can possibly be, and it requires rezoning that 38-foot parcel, then I would be in favor of it. But I think we can't separate that question from the overall development. So when it goes back to the Plan Commission, I would like them to specifically address the LaSalle criteria one by one, and give us sort of their take on it, because it seems to me that that is vital. I also would like to see the Plan Commission address the special use permit criteria and whether this development as proposed conforms to, in their opinion, the requirements of a special use permit. Now tonight, some people who have called in talked about possibly this being part of the library development. And I've heard that repeatedly. When I look at that library, I think, well, you know, maybe they could use some more parking. I know that there is some green space planned behind the library, but here's the deal. The library has not voiced an opinion on this. They have not asked for more parking on this parcel. If they did, I'm sure we would be glad to take that into consideration. But as of now, that party has been pretty silent. So I find it difficult to go to bat for them if they aren't stepping forward now in this process, although I would be sensitive to them if they did. So what I'm really hearing is we need a true transition in this area from condos to an historic district and single family homes. I mean, let's not forget the streetscape on Westminster is fairly unique. We have the Church of the Holy Spirit right down the road from this. We have beautiful historic homes with residents, many of whom have spoken tonight, who've taken great pains and spent a lot of dollars rehabbing and being very proud of those beautiful homes that we have. And when I look at the other developments in the city, such as Kelmscott Park, for example, I think the city was very careful in being sure that those apartment buildings fronted on Western Avenue across from other apartment buildings. And then as you get deeper into that development, you go down to the condo buildings, and then you go to single family homes on a commonly maintained area, which is a nice transition then to the single family homes that are further west of it. And so I think that's what we're looking for here is a development in the third phase that truly is a transition into those historic single family homes. And I know the developers have worked hard, and I give them credit to find ways to lessen the bulk of that building. But when I look at the plans and I look at how large the footprint is of that building, it's just huge. I'd like to see even some discussion of possibly different types of housing on that development. I can think of maybe Georgetown row houses that might be a welcome transition. You know, perhaps we have our fill of $1 million plus condos, and I'm sensitive to Tim Newman and Tom Swarthout, who talk about we need single family homes on large acreage aren't selling anymore, but these condos that we're creating also sell to a certain demographic, and it's an older demographic. And so maybe we need to start to look at housing types that appeal to a younger demographic. I can't think of a lot of young couples for whom a condo building is really an attractive alternative as to where they would want to raise their families. So, so that's what I'm looking for. I'm looking for just what I said, some specific criteria considered by the Plan Commission and their reports on those specific criteria to help us move forward on this. And I look forward to some plan that truly makes a transition to that very important historical section of the city. So I would remand this to the Plan Commission with those specific requests.
Thank you. Any other members of the council that would like to be heard from before it? I mean, it seems like there is a consensus evolving here, but if I'm mistaken in that, I'd welcome anybody to speak up.
Mayor, I'll just, instead of repeating, I'll just say that I echo some of the comments by my fellow aldermen. And I'm very thankful for the thoughtful input by all of the residents that we've received.
Thank you.
If I may, Mr. Mayor, maybe to expand on the earlier comments I made, might have been too early in the proceeding to have made those comments, but I did want to get it out on the floor to consider what role and when the role of the HPC should be a participant in this question that we have before us, or the broader question of the total project, how it's going to look, and whether the additional acreage from the rezoning is needed or not, whether the overall, as you say, the total entity of the project. And again, I'll come back to what I understood the history to be here, where the HPC already has played a role, already had input. And again, I'm looking at Kathy's report, and it says, after the Historic Preservation Commission's vote, was a denial, the developer requested that the matter not be forwarded to the City Council for action, indicating the intent to consider the comments heard to date and explore the potential for alternate approaches to the third phase of the development. And I think that sort of input from HPC, if it has the same sort of effect then, if it has it again, where it's going to result in, a rethinking of the project, to me, that's very critical to the Plan Commission deciding the applicability of the zoning standards and the SUP standards, because I do see them as very potentially, relevant to the consideration. So I'm not going to, argue that it has to go to HPC first. I think it makes sense because the Plan Commission has spent a heck of a lot of time looking through these issues, and they are looking for direction. But, over and above whatever direction we give them, I think, again, it would be very helpful for them to have the benefit of the HPC looking at the massing issues, the architectural style issues, many of the other issues that can influence the siting, the landscape, the streetscape for this project.
Hey, Ray, this is Jim. I don't think anyone disagrees with that. It's just a matter of what's the sequence. And the HPC is going to say, well, like, what's on the table? And we're just saying here that you can't look at zoning kind of without the context of the overall plan. And the people that adjudicate the land use in our community development process is Kathy. And I totally trust Kathy's ability to take your feedback and orchestrate the proper governance role and sequence of meetings between the council and the HPC. But this has come to us from the Plan Commission. The Plan Commission has told us that they rejected a zoning request and a site consolidation. So we need to respond to that and remand back to them, and then trust that Kathy can orchestrate this just like she did the last time, and just like she's done for, I don't know, how many years, Kathy, to manage this process. So I don't think we need to be micromanaging it.
I will just offer Alderman Bushman that we will engage the chairman of both the HPC and Plan Commission in a discussion so we can talk through the sequence and what will be most beneficial to each commission. But we hear your comments and we will take those to heart.
Oops. If I could just try to sum up a little bit and maybe try to bring this to a conclusion for tonight. What I'm hearing for after all the public comment and all the emotion and all the concerns, which are valid and important and not without merit at all. I mean, this is definitely a difficult site with difficult immediately surrounding uses. The desire here is to get it right. We have to recognize that there is an underlying zoning here. There were some comments from the public about, gee, I can't imagine, X. Well, X happens to be the existing underlying by right zoning. So, that's, that is what it is. But I think what I'm hearing from the council is a desire to send a message, to provide sort of advice and counsel to the Plan Commission that the totality of the project is what's most important here. And if a 3-story project that's set further back works better than a 2-story project that's not set as far back and therefore doesn't need the zoning change on this 38-foot strip, that's one thing. If the conclusion that they reach is that the best option or the best plan here is, you know, by the way, this is all driven by what the developer presents. I mean, the Plan Commission isn't in the position, nor is the City Council, nor is the HPC in the position to dictate terms as to what is presented to us. That seems to be what the sense of the council is that there need, you know, if a zone change is necessary to effect the best possible plan, then the council would be supportive of that in the context of that best possible plan. Maybe the best possible plan is to knock it down to 6 units or 5 units or 4 units and make the whole thing a little smaller. That's all, but that's what the Plan Commission does. The Plan Commission, you know, I had the honor of leading the Plan Commission for many years, and we did a lot of negotiating with developers over things like this. And that's the role, is to negotiate on the city's behalf with Kathy and the staff's able support, you know, the best possible conclusion here, and not necessarily, certainly no obligation on any city council or board or commission to maximize the profits of the developer, but it does need to be obviously a viable project in order to get done. So, and that's, so my sense is that that there's a consensus to, you know, remand this back to the Plan Commission with those kinds of instructions. And I think that's reasonably well embodied. And we may want to take a quick look at the resolution that was drafted in advance, just as a way to try to move things along a little faster, if that's where we ended up. But Kathy, could you maybe read the resolution? Too long?
I have it here. I mean, I think it says remand this matter back to the Plan Commission, directing the commission to complete a review of the third phase of the development in its entirety, including consideration of the zoning change, plot of consideration, and a special use permit. And I think you just add the factors that we all mentioned, and they're good comments around balancing and coming up with the equation for the best solution. And Plan Commission and HPC under Kathy's guidance can figure out the right sequence. And I think that's the spirit of it. So I moved that.
Okay.
Was that the entirety of that resolution? I don't have it in front of me anymore. It seemed like it was longer.
It was longer. It is longer. It is on page, someone help me out. The materials start on page 98 of the council packet, and the resolution. Biddy, do you have that in front of you?
I do. It's on page 95.
Thank you. The resolution starts on page 95. I'm happy to read it if you all want.
Maybe you could dispense with all the whereases and things, and let's just quickly go to the meat of it, just to remind everybody.
Sure. Remand to the Plan Commission. The City Council hereby remands consideration of matters relating to the third phase of the McKinley Road multifamily plan development to the Plan Commission, including but not limited to the request for a zone change for a 38-foot wide strip of land adjacent to the city parcel with the following direction. Recognize that the McKinley Road plan development has long been anticipated as a multi-phased residential project incorporating the city property, the city parcel, and the city-owned alley into the last phase of the development. Follow the direction of previous actions by the City Council, which were based on recommendations from the Plan Commission, and remain consistent with past deliberations of the Plan Commission and the Commission's direction to the petitioner, which supported development of Phase 3 with a single condominium building to serve as a transition, infill an existing gap along the streetscape, and complete the build out of the development with improved private roads, public walkways, publicly accessible green space, and extensive landscaping. Consider the requested zone change and incorporation of the 30-foot wide parcel in the context of the opportunity it provides for an appropriate transition in the form of a 2-story building rather than 3, from the taller buildings fronting on McKinley Road to the surrounding single-family houses located in the historic district. The increased width of the 2-story building made possible by the incorporation of the 38-foot wide parcel, which facilitates underground parking, and the opportunity it offers for redevelopment of the adjacent property with a new single-family residence which will enhance the surrounding historic neighborhood and will be subject to review and approval by the Historic Preservation Commission. Take advantage of the opportunity to improve upon the existing conditions. The vacant city parcel, the north-south alley, the lack of an appropriate transition from the development fronting on McKinley Road to the single-family homes, and the lack of a landscaped streetscape entrance to the historic district. Forward a comprehensive recommendation to the City Council on the entirety of the proposed Phase 3, including the zone change, plat of consolidation, and special use permit in an expeditious manner upon completion of the public hearing process.
Oh, boy, that's long.
Can you say that again, Kathy?
I think you kind of lost me halfway through
Well,
that.
I guess, Melanie, the one thing I might suggest we add based on your comments is some specific addressing in whatever their recommendation is of the LaSalle factors.
The LaSalle factors and the special use permit factors.
Right.
But I just am a little concerned that some of that language tended to limit the options of the Plan Commission. There was mention in there of it's got to be a condominium building and it has to be 2 stories or something like that. And I don't think we want to redline their decision like that. I think what I'm hearing tonight is we'd like them to consider the best possible development for this property that transitions in the best possible way to the historic homes to the east. And that's kind of, and taking into consideration the LaSalle factors and the special use permit. And that's kind of where I would tend to leave it with them.
And Alderman Rummel, then just jump in here for a second.
Yeah.
I know that the resolution was prepared specifically for the development plan that was presented with the plan to the Plan Commission. I think Mayor Pantaleone referenced what's important to remember is that the city, the Plan Commission, and the residents, and none of us designed the plan. It's the developer's plan to present. This is the development application, the 2-story with the strip incorporated into the development. That is the plan that is part of the application and the plan that's been presented to the Plan Commission. I think that's why it was referenced that way in the resolution, is that the application that's before the Plan Commission, what the City Council is asking is that the Plan Commission review the entire application as a whole. So that's why it references the 2-story with the footprint on the strip.
Yeah, so you could almost add some verbiage to say if the Plan Commission can't get consensus on that, then they have, kind of degrees of freedom, or the developer does, to submit another plan. I mean, I think that's the best way to approach this.
Alderman Rummel,
This could be the best and final of the developer, and if that's the case, then that's fine. It's just that we need a complete package and a recommendation, not just a one-off zoning board or a zoning request. And if it's a complete recommendation and it's a reject, then at least we have a complete plan to talk through. And so I think we could use the existing this existing resolution with the caveat that if the developer presents another one, please, factor in all the LaSalle factors and the special use permit to come up with the best, possible option for that parcel or mix of parcels. Because it could be just on the GR3, it could be on both. I mean, we don't know, but I think that's probably the best we can do.
What I heard consistently, if I might add, from several of the aldermen was best possible development for the property. And we can certainly add language to that effect, because what the direction I think that provides and what I've heard from the council is the best possible development for the property that transitions in the best possible way, and if appropriate, consider the zone change as part of that. But we could certainly add that. I think I've heard that from several of you, so we can certainly add that into the resolution.
Okay.
Great. I think that encompasses it. I just don't want to tie their hands too much. I understand that there is this specific plan before the Plan Commission. I'm not sure that that's going to pass in its current form. So I would, like a little more direction, because I think that the developer has certainly, made attempts to be accommodating, and the more direction we can give them, I think the fairer we're being to the developer at this point.
Okay, so procedurally, I'd like to get something accomplished tonight after all this. How can we do that procedurally? I think there's a pretty clear consensus. Kathy's reviewed and presented some language verbally. I don't want to get in a situation where we're wordsmithing this for the next 2 months.
Right. If Alderman Preschlack wants to withdraw his motion, and somebody he or someone else can make a motion to approve it as amended, consistent with the discussions. If that gets a second, then we could vote on that.
Okay, so I'll withdraw my motion.
Okay.
And do you want to make the next motion, Jim?
Well, I think it's moved to pass the resolution as stated on page 95 and 96, with the additions that the Plan Commission pursues the best possible project with the best possible transition to the east on the property, with the caveat that the zoning change could be in it or not.
And we will.
And please follow the LaSalle criteria and the special use criteria in your deliberations.
Clearly, yeah.
I would second that motion. I think that's the best we're going to do tonight, but I think we all have a common consensus. And so, congratulations to Mr. Mayor for leading the discussion, and for all of the residents who gave us their input. I think and I also want to comment on how respectful this process has been. In some of the past deliberations, the residents have been to every single one of the comments that I saw or emails that I saw. Now, correct me if I'm wrong, but it was all very deferential and respectful, and I appreciate that.
Yes, by and large, that's true. There were a couple of exceptions. They didn't go to everybody, but
that's why you're paid the big bucks.
Right. That's why I get the $10. Okay, well, I would then call for a roll call vote. Biddy?
Alderman Morris has recused himself. Alderman Karas?
Aye.
Alderman Rummel?
Aye.
Let's see. Alderman Preschlack?
Aye.
Alderman Gashgarian? Aye. Alderman Bushman?
Aye.
Alderman Weber?
Aye.
7 yea, 1 abstention. Motion carries.
Did you skip me, Biddy?
Oh, I'm sorry. No, I didn't. I said Alderman Notes.
Just for the record, yay for me.
It looked like you did this. Looked like a
Great.
yay.
Okay, well, thank you. And obviously, this is to be continued. So the next item on our agenda is new business, but there being none, I'll skip that. So the next thing after that is additional items for discussion and comments by council members. Is there anything not on the agenda tonight that any of the council members would like to comment on? Okay, well, there being no further business, I would entertain a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Seconded.
All in favor?
Aye.
All opposed? There being none, the meeting is adjourned. Thank you all for your patience here.
Thank you.